Commissioner Franklin, can you let me know if you can hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, yes. It's really.
Well, how are you?
Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to get here.
That was the first time I ever heard that. I was like, did they give you? Railroad box.
Alexander. Oh, yeah, where did they put it down like a gun? We had a.
Yes.
Round came back.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing good. How are you? Main job, I had to let go of a few folks.
What do you do for work?
Homeland security, information technology project. Yes, so.
How's your mom doing?
She's good. She's her location though.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I had to finally convince her.
I put it on.
What happened was I got traveling too much and I stayed at home.
Bad.
Congratulations. I used to live in Trenton. I used to live in Spotsylvania. And I had so many friends living in the city. Yep. I represent.
Yeah.
You know, they nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. Hang on, wait. Hang on. I gotta go through.
You have a couple choices. And then I was like, you know what, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Mr. Frazier, can you let me know if you can hear me?
Until you're elected, you realize what. I don't know. Switched it right.
I've seen them.
Thanks now.
Like the delegates in my old seat.
I'm not on that.
So we have staff, so that's what makes it so much.
And it is important, but I haven't gone that far.
But I'm ready.
But it is.
I was like,
Hey,
It's funny, my middle name is Alan.
I need to ask you this. Did you go down?
Some people did. I did.
How are you doing, Alex?
No, I haven't had that time.
No, I
Body and I was.
We got through the budget. We got through the budget.
I told them I didn't look at anything. I don't look at it.
Yes, it was just like.
Yeah, try to get here. And then
when you know what you're gonna do, you know, the day of, just so I know where you're at.
What Jesus all about? Turn your water into wine.
I said, here you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody reading the right Bible.
Yeah. I think she was.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Old hat.
But no, I didn't. I told him I haven't had.
She sent me a
Yeah,
video.
pretty much. Yeah. Next.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, go back.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
So, we need a lot of at-risk funding if you work
Listen.
on that.
If I could be on a grocery, yes.
Never get mine about.
Um,
What do you think?
So basically because of the, yeah.
Right.
They have to introduce it and we have to.
I've been doing a lot of,
7 hours,
reading.
30 hours.
I've been driving like crazy.
So
Almost
on
reading
Monday,
for
basically, gaveling.
Yeah.
They-
So I've been doing stuff with the different assets, but that's.
And then we'll come back to
I
session.
stay out of that. I don't think.
Yep, yep. So, and then after that.
Yeah. How are you?
Whatever. So they can decide.
I feel like we just did
And
that.
then.
That's all good.
The final budget.
Thank you for reviewing that.
I didn't say you were walking around.
Finally across the aisle, my dad does not like it.
Oh, she's up?
Something has to get done.
Oh, nice. We're in North Carolina, too, Raleigh. Yeah, she's a triangler.
I said, the chairman, they said big angry. I said,
Oh, nice.
I said, wow.
Yeah, you did tell your chairman.
But I was shocked this week.
You're right on. Meeting.
Yeah, I think it's like sometime in and after that.
Yeah, they have to, right.
And Sunday too.
That's okay.
But next week is. Hey, you made us talk all week at 90. I put the mile,
So I don't know if I'm gonna be your favorite, depending on.
Those nights.
Doesn't matter.
Oh.
You don't have to.
Yes, how fast?
I get very that way.
I said, you know what, sure, I'll do it just for you guys, so that way. we have-
There it is. I got it.
Oh, there you are. We hear you now.
Okay, I got it.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Now, is my husband picture showing up there? The picture's not showing, is it?
I wasn't paying attention.
I said, is the picture showing? I'm using my husband's computer and his picture's up there.
Well, if that's the picture, then that's probably the picture that's showing.
Okay,
Yes, it is the picture of Mr. Fraser and your
okay. Well, there's nothing I can do about that right now. I'll let it stay. So this means, that's George. Yes, that's George.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it sounds the same. Did it hear here?
That was awesome. That was so funny.
I spent so much time down here. I don't laugh.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, see what you develop.
County park. That's in the little bitty donut.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the medium. Their time. It's gonna be one lane each direction with one lane.
Oh, so you don't have to like anything.
No, we already know. Out on the east side.
Oh,
in
yeah.
all of the properties. They're putting- Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa. That got the room quiet. Only reason I did it is 7:01, I believe, and so we wanted to go ahead and get started. We have a quorum. We are in the house. We're gonna go ahead and get this show on the road. Oh, so I do have, 3 commissioners that want to remote in. So it looks like we have 3. Commissioner Margaret Franklin, are you up there? Are you online? And Commissioner Tom Gordy, Commissioner Deborah Frazier, are they online?
Yes, I am
Okay.
here. This is Commissioner Frazier.
Okay, so we'll start with you, Commissioner Frazier. Let me get to mine. State the reason for your remote participation and your location.
My location is at my home in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I have a personal commitment with my grandbabies to babysit, so.
I love it. Okay, family first. So Commissioner Gordy or Commissioner Franklin, both of you, are you online yet?
I'm here. This is Commissioner Gordy.
Okay, so we'll fall right in with you, Commissioner Gordy. If you can state your reason and location for remote participation.
Yeah, I'm participating remotely from my home. Just logistically could not get there in time for the meeting.
Okay, and Commissioner Franklin, are you with us? Commissioner Franklin. So we have 2, and maybe she'll join us later. So we have 2 commissioners, so you know their locations and reason. Can I get a motion? A second. Okay, so we've got a motion, Commissioner Allen. We got a second, Commissioner Gary. Please call for the vote, ma'am.
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie.
Aye.
Margaret Franklin, Tom Gordy.
Aye.
Kim Short.
Aye.
Tanisha Allen.
Aye.
Monica Gary. Aye. Pamela Sebeski.
Aye.
Jeanette Richel.
Yes.
Shannon Holmes.
Yes.
Deborah Frazier.
I,
Todd Horsley.
Yes.
And Roja Henson Jr.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. And so I'll just go back one more time, Commissioner Franklin.
Yes.
Oh, there she is. Okay. All right, Commissioner Franklin, if you can state your location and the reason for remote participation, please.
Yes, I'm in Northern Virginia, handling additional affairs.
Okay, so can I get a motion in a second? So moved. Okay, we have a motion, Commissioner Bodie. I didn't hear a second. All right, second. Commissioner Shorter, okay. You're short, I'm sorry, no, you shorter. What?
Chris.
Hey, Chris. Okay,
All right, Victor Angry,
aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Tom Gordy,
Aye.
Kim Short.
Yes.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sebeski.
Aye.
Jeanette Richel.
Yes.
Shannon Holmes.
Aye.
Todd Horsley.
Yes.
And Roja Henson Jr.
Yes. All right. And before I bring up our safety instruction, I want to just acknowledge Commissioner Henson, you know, our latest member to the commission, a delegate out of Richmond here, Virginia House delegates, and so welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So we are gonna get Byron Lloyd to come up and give us a safety and security kind of update. But before we do that, we've got, no, come on. We've got a little something for you. Got a little something for you.
Oh.
You do the honors. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're celebrating 10 years. 10 years. The 10 years. Here we go, we got a photo here, let's get you in the middle. Yeah, here, you hold this, yeah, you hold it. There we go, all right. Oh, yeah, on that. I need to start my house here.
Somehow I got on video instead of pictures. Oh, that's perfect. And one more.
You still have to give the safety message.
Yeah. So, yeah, now we'll.
How you doing, everybody? Thank you guys for everything. We're in the season of tornadoes and bad weather, go from winter to spring, you know how that is. So I just want to give you guys some information on preparation, what to do during and after a potential tornado. So one is know the signs of a tornado. If you're looking in the sky, you're looking for rotating funnel-shaped clouds, any clouds approaching with debris, and loud roar similar to a freight train. Also sign up for your community's warning system. I mentioned that back in the winter time when it came to snow. So if you have, like, Prince William County has Everbridge, make sure you guys sign up for that and have your community and your staff do the same. And then pay attention to weather reports. So that's the preparation. Now during, I'm gonna ask everybody to not do this, not that you've ever done this, but people have. Please don't try to outrun the tornado. I've seen it, we've seen things like that, don't do it. If you are in your car or outdoors, make sure that you cover yourself with your arms and cover yourself with a blanket or some sort of coat protection. Again, I mentioned in the winter about preparation, so you still should have a safety kit. Something out there that maybe has a blanket, something to protect yourself. Not that we get a whole lot of hurricanes, there would, you know. But and then after, stay clear of any fallen lines or broken utility lines. Do not enter a building that could be damaged until you're told that it's safely to come in. And then make sure you save your phone for emergency phone calls, because we do know electricity sometimes goes down, things like that. Then you can text your family through social media or text messages, again, to preserve that battery. So that's all I have. And as always, Christine will be sending you all out for your community and your staff some information that you can share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go to roll.
Victor Andrew,
Here.
Andrew Daly, Kenny Bodie,
Present.
Margaret Franklin. Ms. Franklin. Thank you. Tom Gordy,
Here.
Bob Weir, DeShondra Jefferson, Karen Mills, Idris O'Connor, Kim Short. Here. Yesley Vega, Tanisha Allen.
Here.
Monica Gary,
Present.
Meg Bunky, Pamela Young, Pamela Sebeski,
Here.
Dr. Smith, Jeanette Rischel. Here. Alana Mensing, Daryl Moore, Shannon Holmes.
Here.
Will McIntosh, Deborah Frazier,
Here,
Lori Hayes, Jacob Lane, Kevin Marshall, Jennifer DeBrule, Todd Horsley.
Here.
Zach Trogdon, Rosia Henson Jr.,
Here.
Brianna Sewell, and Jeremy McPike. Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thanks, Jan. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Motion by Commissioner Short, second by Commissioner Bodie. Any changes? None? Okay.
Victor Angry.
Aye.
Kenny Bodie.
Aye.
Margaret Franklin.
Aye.
Tom Gordy.
Aye.
Kim Short.
Yes.
Tanisha Allen.
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sebeski.
Aye.
Jeanette Rischel.
Yes.
Shannon Holmes.
Aye.
Deborah Frazier.
aye.
Todd Horsley.
Yes.
Rosia Henson Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion's approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Now can I get approval for the minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We have a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Bodie, second by Colleague Mack. Can Pamela.
My name is Sebastian.
Yes, Pam. I was gonna call you Pam. Yeah, Commissioner Sebastian. Come on up. Have a moment there. I'll say, we got a motion, we got a second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none. Call for the vote.
Victor Angry.
Aye.
Kenny Bodie.
Aye.
Margaret Franklin.
Aye.
Tom Gordy.
Aye.
Karen Mills. Kim Short. Yes. Tanisha Allen.
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sebeski.
Aye.
Jeanette Richel.
Yes.
Janet Holmes.
Aye.
Deborah Frazier.
Aye.
Todd Horsley. Rosa Henson Jr.
Abstain.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. And now, Mr. Dalton, the floor is yours, VRE update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Let me, you do have the CEO report in your package. Just a couple of things I did want to point out that similar to the last couple of months, we're still striving to reach our target on-time performance or reliability. Still struggling a little bit there, primarily just congestion in the region. From a ridership standpoint, for the month of April, and again, reliability and this number for ridership, we actually reached the highest ridership, total ridership in the month of April since March of 2020. Still gaining additional riders, passengers, one or two at a time, but we've seen a constant uptick since the beginning of the year. And so that was a sort of a mini milestone, still 40–45%, pre-COVID, but it's going in the right direction. Next thing, a couple of things. We do have a couple of meet the management events out there. Believe not next Wednesday after we'll be at Crystal City, and then the following Wednesday we'll be at Franconia Springfield. Those are usually 2:30 to 7 p.m. If you're in the area, want to drop by, it's a great time for us to interact with our passengers, give them an opportunity to ask us questions, and we also give them updates on our various projects and other things that are going on at PRE. And then lastly, before I go to 6.2, just wanted to, if you haven't already received a save the date, May 21st, 10 a.m. Very excited about doing a ribbon cutting at the Fredericksburg station. That is, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but that's been a project that, particularly in the last couple of years, to rehabilitate that station. And again, invite you all down there. We're just going to do a simple ribbon cutting ceremony, but it's yet again a testimony to regional collaboration, primarily on the funding side, to get that type of work done. So we're pretty excited about that. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Dalton, as always, for the report. I've heard sort of mixed things looking ahead a little bit, and congratulations on getting the ridership back up to where we were before the pandemic hit, essentially. I've heard mixed messages about what the federal government's gonna be doing in the next 6 to 8 months. I've heard things like, some of the ABC agencies will be having people go back now 4 days versus 3. Other ones are gonna just stay at the 3 they're at. Other ones are now gonna be, some combination thereof. They have a week where they're 3 in, and then next week they might be 4 and then 3 in, depending on what's going on. Do you have any insight or intel into that?
That's a great question, and I'll just refer back to the last couple of weeks, particularly at these Meet the Management events. And even last night at Alexandria, staff was out there. We hear the same thing or a similar thing. Some folks are telling us, well, I'm back 3 days a week. That's it. There's no changes. Talked to the young lady last night. She said she's only coming back once a week since the beginning of the year, but June 1st, they're coming back 3 days a week. So it's just, and again, we try to trend that, we try to gain something from that, but it's just still all of it. But our numbers show just a gradual increase, so we'll take what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Holmes.
I just wanted to say that Fredericksburg is also looking forward to the ribbon cutting on the 21st. And it's a lovely place to come down and do the ribbon cutting and get coffee or lunch after.
I would just comment because, oh, no, you're gonna.
No.
I'll just comment because we're we're in another interesting place, and we keep saying this. So the great anticipation for VRE really is the Long Bridge project. Because I know have you started the weekend service? Like you have you guys are gonna do a weekend did I hear that correct?
So what we have essentially in our budget for FY 25, which starts July 1, is a package of service enhancements. Of course, the one we're most excited about is starting Saturday service.
Saturday.
Okay, and we're still working through some elements with our host railroads. I will say one of the reasons why we have not nailed that down, and I'll go back to the congestion piece. A lot of our congestion comes out of Washington Union Terminal in the PM. Okay, a lot of that congestion is the result of infrastructure issues, signals, interlocks, switches. Amtrak has just basically presented us a draft plan that would essentially get in there and over the course of a couple of 2-3 months, make severe improvements to that infrastructure. It just so happens to be the months of July, August, and partly September. So obviously what we don't want to do is go and introduce a new service and then have to intermix with that construction work and stuff like that. So anyway, we're still working through that, but to answer your question, that's what's on the.
And I will say, for our new commissioners and even our recently new commissioners and even us as commissioners, like I think it's really beneficial, and maybe we should get another base presentation from VRE, because here's some of the issues. You share that line, and so you're not the priority. Amtrak and CSX Cargo are, so we don't have like really direct, but the Long Bridge gives us that access to really be like the success of VRE. And then it really can create what outside of what I see here is always about, commuters going into the city and coming out. Well, if we can really create that whole experience of going into the city for a nightlife and adventures, that rail could be significant for that, which would clearly grow that passenger ridership. And so that's why I keep the anticipation about the Long Bridge project, because it literally will give VRE, I went down and took the tour of where we were gonna park VRE trains. I forget where that was. I don't even know if that's happening now, but I know there was like 2 areas where we kind of shared parking for the rail.
In at IBC Coachard in
DC. And maybe that's worth a lot of commissioners experiencing that and seeing that again to understand like the anticipation or the hope that, when we get all this in place, it creates this real rail opportunity. That's real significant. And I know Pam, because Commissioner Sebastian.
It's okay.
You were at the when we had the anniversary. I forget how many years that was, and there was David Brinkley, who really was the kind of the inspiration behind a lot of VRE. It's just a real opportunity for VRE, I believe, that we are still hoping and waiting for an anticipation of this opportunity that creates us to have a real rail in Prince County. Because again, don't want to get on the metro, but that's a vision that's way out there. And so
We all won't be alive if that happens.
yeah, I feel like we won't.
So with that, Mr. Chair, that's a nice segue. 6.2, we have a team here that's going to give you an update on our long range planning. Okay,
Come on.
and I'll let them get into it, but I'll just let you know this is an effort that's been going on nearing almost 2 years here, and of course we'll step you through a little bit of the process, but this gives you that. It's a very concise look at an enormous amount of effort that sort of points us in that future direction, both near term and long term. And what you will see weaved into this, capacity opens up, but you're right. It all hinges on that. So if I may, Mr. Chair, let me just quickly introduce Nick Ruiz, who will be our presenter. He's our planning program manager. And then Christine Huffner is here. She's our director of planning and environmental policy. So Nick, I know operations board members and others have been very gracious with Nick, if you will, over the last 18 months or so as he's come to the operations board continues to update along with Christine and stuff. So without further ado, Nick's gonna step you through some slides. One of the things I just wanna, this is, if you haven't seen any of this, the intent here is to just kind of, a little bit of a primer here. By no means, this is the end, if you will. And if we do have some, we're on a schedule to come back to you. I'm not asking you to approve anything here or anything like that, but this should open up, if not some dialogue right now, but just let you know that, the team continues to do, some road shows around the region with jurisdictional staff and stuff, but we want to have that, whether in this room or after this presentation, just continue to have some dialogue with you. So with that, no further ado, here's Nick.
Thank you, Rich. And as you said, I'm Nick Ruiz. I'm the planning program manager with VRE, and I'm thrilled to present this big milestone in our long range plan process. So I guess I'm not controlling the slides, so I'll just do a next slide when I get to that point. Is that right? All right. So a little bit of background on system planning. Every transit agency needs to do some long range planning to understand, where it is today and where it wants to be in the future. And our last long range plan was updated back in 2014. And I don't need to tell anyone in this room that the world has changed a lot since 2014. Our communities and the communities that touch our region are growing and changing. Northern Virginia is projected to grow between now and 2050 by 35%, but the areas south of the Occoquan River, south of Prince William County, in the Fredericksburg area, are projected to grow by 65%.
Question, are we including Stafford in that Northern Virginia?
So no, actually, when I say the Fredericksburg area, I include Stafford, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania. So Northern Virginia is Prince William County and north.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The extension.
Yeah.
We're like Northern Virginia for funding purposes, we are. Go ahead.
Yeah. Regardless, a tremendous amount of growth, both on the north and the south side of the Occoquan River, and all the way down to places in southern Spotsylvania is expected. Telework, it's here to stay, right? So back in 2019, 59% of VRE riders said they didn't telework at all. 2022, only 37% say they don't telework at all. And we have some of the comments that were made about Long Bridge just now, a tremendous opportunity in the next decade or two to expand our capacity with the infrastructure that's being provided by the state initiative Transforming Rail in Virginia. And so if you click one more, there's another thing on this slide.
Next slide.
Yep, right there. In short, Northern Virginia doesn't end at the Occoquan River, and so transit improvements to the commuter rail system will improve quality of life for residents both north and south, east and west. If you go to the next slide, when we talk about a system plan, we like to start by talking about framing things in terms of benefits. And I'll go into some of the specifics of the benefits that we've actually enumerated as a result of some of the ridership projections that we've done for this planning process. But you can see it's not just butts and seats. It's not just the number of people commuting to their work or to other events. It's all of these benefits, the environment, to the roadway network, to property owners that commuter rail brings and investments that commuter rail brings. And so if you go to the next slide, just when we started this process, before we even did one hour of analysis on one bit of data, we backed up and said, what's our vision? We spent a couple of months developing a vision statement for the plan and a set of goals with which we were going to assess the different scenarios for our future. And so our vision is this, that VRE is going to grow to serve the region as a transportation service of choice, creating meaningful connections and economic opportunities in a safe, sustainable, and equitable manner. And if you go to the next slide, we have a set of key goals. Most importantly, safety and reliability, but also right behind that, market growth and financial stability. So as the system grows to carry more riders, how can we do that in the most financially sustainable way, given expected future funding sources? Moving on to the next slide. This is just a very brief overview. I won't go into too much detail on the schedule of the plan. But just for you all tonight, we're in the final phase of a 3-phase planning process that started back in June of 2022. And so that will culminate with presentations to this board, to our operations board, additional roadshow presentations to our jurisdictional partners, with hopefully a final adoption later this year. So, but going back to 2 summers ago, there was a tremendous amount of analysis done, interim presentations that were made to the VRE operations board and to jurisdiction transportation planning staff in the past 18 months. So moving on to the next slide. In the short term, talking about Long Bridge and some of the other infrastructure improvements, and we don't have to wait until 2050 to see some of the improvements. I love it when I present on the system plan 2050 and someone says, oh, 2050, I'll be dead by then. But the fact is, there's a lot of things that VRE will be able to do, in the next 6 or 7 years. We'll be able to run 63% more daily trains. We'll be able to expand to run a full weekend service. Adding different trains at times that aren't in the peak period, peak direction commute, provide a more diverse trip purpose for people who aren't necessarily going into DC for work at the times that traditional commuters are. And then we'll also be able to expand our yard and our train storage facilities and certain key stations to be able to accommodate that growth. I mean, that's stuff that's planned and funded, already in the slot for 2030. But if you move to the next slide, what we're envisioning for 2050 is a recommended scenario that sees VRE acting much more robustly in our region with a train every 20 minutes in the peak period in the peak direction, and a train every 30 minutes in the reverse peak. And then in times when people aren't, the intensity of commuting isn't as high, kind of the middays, the late evenings, we would offer a train at least every hour in each direction. And that's going to have tremendous benefits for attracting riders who commuter rail might work for them in one direction, but might not in another direction because of the times. It helps us to connect to the regional transportation network, to the local bus systems in your all's jurisdictions, to Metro, and just to make that more seamless. We also look to introduce some level of express service because we recognize that these are long trips that people are taking. These are 50, 60 mile trips that take an hour and a half. And for the outer jurisdictions like Spotsylvania, like places in western Prince William County, those are long trips. And so if we can do anything to stay competitive with the private automobile, that'll get people on the train and off the highways. So, moving on to the next slide here, just quantifying some of those benefits that I discussed earlier. We are expecting in 2050 with that full level of service that I just described, an annual VMT avoided or reduced by over 51 million vehicle miles traveled in our region. We can expect to save the traveling public $16.7 million in annual vehicle operating cost savings. I like to say that's a lot of mortgage payments. It's a lot of 529 college tuition savings plans. It's a lot of vacations, a lot of spending at restaurants. That's real money that people aren't spending on driving to and from work and to other places. And then this is just, honing in on the value of the corridor, and not just passenger movement, but also freight movement. Our friends at DRPT provided us with some data from their recent statewide rail plan that looked at the value of having the RF&P rail corridor, that corridor between Spotsylvania and Alexandria. What is the value to the Commonwealth? And it's over $157 million in 2022 dollars. And so if you took that corridor away and you said all of that freight needs to start moving by 95 now, overnight you'd have 4,100 additional daily truck trips on 95. So that's basically end-to-end a line of trucks from the Pentagon to Spotsylvania County in one lane of traffic. So just the amount of benefit that the corridor already provides, and the investments that we'll be making in the corridor in the next 10 to 20 years is pretty significant. Moving on to the next slide here, taking a look at just what we're able to connect to in 2050 and even before 2050, really with a more frequent level of service, a longer span of service, we'll be able to connect at almost every station in our region and serve as that regional transportation spine. So somebody who's making a trip, say, from somewhere in Spotsy on Fredericksburg Transit, but they're really trying to go to somewhere in Fairfax County, they can get on the bus at Spotsy or Fredericksburg, get on VRE, get off at Lorton, go to their final destination. And, with 20-minute headways, that really makes it a lot easier. So, moving on to the next slide here, just another quantification of the intensity of service that we're proposing. A parity of service on both lines, 58 trains per day. That's essentially if you looked at the 20-minute headways and the hourly off-peak service and the span of service, it's 58 trains per day on both lines. And we also are proposing something kind of unique here, and that's that when we're looking at the analysis, we're saying, okay, well, where's our region growing the fastest? It's growing in places, well off our corridor. It's farther south. It's like Caroline County. It's Culpeper County. And while it's cost prohibitive to expand rail service to that part of the region, even in the next 20-25 years, we think we could, serve that growing area of our region with some connecting bus service. And we've not gone into too much detail on the specifics of that, but just to quantify, in the final plan that we would be connecting some level of bus service to some greater level of rail service to really tie everything together. If you move on to the next slide here, I've got just a quantification of some of the capital improvements that would be required to implement this vision. So when we talk about these improvements, these are things that are not planned or funded that would be required above and beyond the 2030 level of infrastructure. So it's a fairly significant, undertaking, but by making these improvements to the rail corridor, you benefit freight, you keep the freight moving, you benefit passenger service by giving people more options, and you benefit Amtrak service. So, the intercity trains can flow through the corridors as well. If you go to the next slide here, I've got, just drilling down specifically, for those of you who don't know, we currently run a fleet of 100 rail cars. We've got 20 locomotives. We would need to expand that fairly significantly here by 2030 and 2050. Ultimately in 2030 up to 168 rail cars and 212 rail cars by 2050. And this is just a breakdown of, if you were to assume a typical procurement schedule for those rail cars, this is the level of investment that VRE would need to make over the next 20-some years. Same story on the next slide with the locomotives, slightly smaller amounts, but a locomotive is well more expensive than a rail car, but it can work a lot harder. So projecting 31 locomotives in the fleet required by 2050. One other thing I'll point out on this is that in the same period, in the 2030, 2040 time horizon, when we're looking to expand service, we're also going to need to be replacing aging infrastructure. So there's kind of going to be a double punch of replacing what's been out on the rails for 15, 20 years or more, and then also expanding. Moving on to the next slide here, just a quantification of the operating cost needs here. The way to read this is on the left-hand side of the left-hand chart. Those are the costs if we got to a 2030 level of service and then stopped growing and just let those costs inflate out to 2050. And on the right side, those pair of bar charts is the quantification of needs when we implement the full service, the full 2050 service vision in 2050. You can see that the gap widens from an operating cost perspective relative to the revenues we expect to generate under our current funding models. And then on the right-hand side, you see kind of the projected ridership, over 8 million people carried on VRE in 2050 with that full service vision. And then my final slide of content here, just leave you with this. Today we're carrying approximately 7,800 average daily riders. across both of our lines. And, if we were to implement the full service vision by 2050, we could be carrying over 260% more riders, up to, over 28,000 riders a day on the weekday. That's gonna really drive some of those benefits that I spoke to in the previous slide. And will really make VRE a more useful part of more people in this region's, daily commute or just their recreation or, personal travel needs. So just want to leave you with that slide. And then my final slide is just to say that our schedule, as we've conceived of it here, will be at our operations board on June 21st, asking them for their recommendation to adopt. And then we'll return to, and this should say NBTC and PRTC same day, at your all's July meeting later this summer. So that's the end of my presentation. With that, I'll take any questions, and anything I can't answer, I'll
All right.
refer it over here.
Thanks for the presentation. We do have a question. Thank you, Commissioner Allen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Actually, I have several questions. First of all, I'll start with some points. I do like the fact of the commuting buses in 2015 to connect the Culpeper, Caroline region. I know my colleague Supervisor Gary can tell you on the weekends in our region, and Commissioner Holmes can tell you it's a nightmare, as a lot of cars are coming from our region head up north. So being able to take some of those off on the weekends, and especially during the day when people are trying to get up north to go, because people think, for DC, it's only up to maybe, the Fredericksburg area, but people from Culpeper and Caroline actually commute a lot too. So being able to have that bus service to connect them to the new Fredericksburg renovated platform, I think it's a great idea, and hopefully maybe there's an opportunity in there for us to tap into the state funding, the way that Stafford County and Spotsylvania have benefited recently from those commuter buses. I'm gonna say thank goodness Delegate Henson is here, because that significant amount of money, $300 million over the next 26 years, that's a huge financial undertaking. And so that kind of leads into my to one of my first question. Because there's gonna be a significant percentage increase in costs, about 163%, I think is what you have over the next year to achieve these goals. Are you planning to incorporate that over a 26-year period where through each budgetary cycle, you're allocating that fund within there? Or are you gonna be asking this for this in chunks to be able to get you to 2050? Because irrespective of the state, we can't really bank on the state coming through for us in the starting funding level, no offense. But as jurisdiction, maybe, we can get a kind of an idea of, okay, every year, if we put this aside, kind of like, what you do for yourselves in your house, if you're trying to do something major, if you put this little nest egg away every year, by 2050, this is what you'll be able to achieve in terms of getting that funding source. And so let's say we're short maybe 10 million, maybe that's when we can ask the state, hey, we only need an extra 10 million from you, versus asking them for significant funding. And then they're usually like, well, that's too much for us to be able to swallow. So that's my first question.
Did you want to speak to the funding?
Yeah, let me just say that, a lot of this, and it's, the intent, obviously, we come up with the financial stuff at the end, right? Because we got to figure out, sort of the what first, what's out there, and then put estimates together. I will say that, we need to put a number out there, and then to your point, we have to have a financial plan, and a robust financial plan. And even if we, let's just say at some level we adopt a plan, that work doesn't stop there. We have to, and as I think everybody sitting in this room, the funding side is a challenge for all of us. We're not sugarcoating that. But again, we come up with the plan, and then the financial plan gives us, essentially different, different potential methodologies based on what we know now. But we also know that things have to change from a funding perspective, but this helps inform that, right? This helps inform, our, elected officials and other stakeholders, to give them that, hey, in order to do this, how much, right? Well, at least we have an estimate and stuff like that. I say that on the funding side. The other opportunity here is on the cost side of the expense side, right? You know, we haven't scrubbed this honestly to a level to where we, you know, can actually pick out, you know, synergies, pick out economies of scale and stuff like that. This is just very broad. But I will say that has to change as well. We have to come up with, you know, more cost efficient ways of providing this service. So that's, again, that's how we, you know, that's what I always refer to as maintenance. You have a plan, you have a vision, and then we have to maintain that and continue to, you know, come back, you know, not, and I know it said 2014. We're not going to come back in 10 years and go, hey, you know, we just woke up yesterday and decided we need to update this plan. It's a constant maintenance program. So completely understand by the way of your question, you know, the importance of that. And that's what we have projected in the near term, to identify that funding or financial plan and share that. Say, hey, who else has some good ideas to help us get to, you know, achieve our goals? And again, not VRE's goals, but what would become the region's goal, you know, to help mitigate congestion and all the other things that we listed up there in terms of benefits.
Thank you. The other two questions is kind of tied into the long-term planning. So you were saying in 2050, the outlining the spine along the Fredericksburg line. Being that Supervisor Gary and I are the two most northern supervisors that represent Stafford County that has the bulk of our population right now. Quantico is an issue for us in terms of accessibility.
Yes.
And so if we're trying to expand services and offer more opportunities to increase our riderships and make trains make sense for our constituents, especially if we're gonna increase the cost, is there plans to build more stations? Because, and especially, you know, I know it's expensive besides Potomac Shores, but in Stafford, for example, both of our stations is usually in the south and it's a little bit central. So it's not where ideally where the bulk of our population commutes from.
Right. Let me just short answer there. Again, we you know, we looked at demand and basically demand relative to, you know, adjacent to the line, adjacent to existing stations and stuff like that, recognizing, well, back up. We picked out a couple potential hotspots, but it was more in the Alexandria area. But back to your point with like Potomac Shores, we see that as a relief for Quantico as well. But one of the things, it's essentially a destination station for us as well. Lots of folks get on at Spotsylvania, the Stafford County stations and stuff, and actually commute to, you know, the Quantico station. So I guess the shortest way to say it, yeah, we see that as an opportunity. We haven't identified potential, you know, additional stations in that area, but that'll be part of the, you know, the ongoing maintenance of the plan.
Okay, because that's, like I said, for us, a lot of, you know, for us, the bulk of our traffic is usually between Humphreys and North Stafford. And so being able to remove our people from being able to even commute north or south, because Stafford is in Prince William County, we kind of only have two major arteries to commute north and south, 95 and 1. And so to get to the stations, we have to go in traffic either way.
Exactly.
So having something closer to the bulk of our population would be super helpful as you kind of work on making the plan work for each jurisdiction.
Absolutely.
So that would be a suggestion, at least for us from Stafford, is putting a station where because I sincerely believe if we had something that was more feasible to a lot of our constituents, then that ridership number might even increase, because then people can say, okay, what's the point of me going to Dumfries or South Stafford? I might as well just keep driving.
Exactly.
So, you know, that would be one suggestion. That's feedback. I know it's early, but that was just.
No, that's great. That's what we need. We need to hear that.
And then lastly, I guess. I apologize, but long-term planning is something that gets me. So I'm always, you know, with that. I know you said that you've engaged stakeholders. Have you, and I can't speak for our staff because I haven't gotten anything, but have you engaged with our long-term planners within the localities to adjust our comp plans?
No, so we've I've given some presentations at the FAMPO TAC meeting, met with some folks in transportation, transportation planning in Stafford. But nothing to the level of detail of, hey, let's open up a comp plan, that we've just been presenting, here's what we've been doing. Do you have any questions? That kind of discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll circle back to our staff on that, because I think that's an opportunity for jurisdictions to be able to like Stafford has a lot of environmental challenges. And then we also have issues with development, as you know, the 69%. We're gonna get some of that, and so having that kind of being part of our comp plan and the prospects of what transportation will look like, I think would be super helpful to helping us to try to align those two causes between rail and vehicles.
Perfect. And just to add on to that, as Rich has said, as part of the maintenance of the plan, that's another area of looking at TOD opportunities, or, where are there opportunities to focus development in partnership with the jurisdictions to benefit the VRE ridership, as well as benefit the county from an economic development standpoint. So, that is not part of the current plan, that we were able to look at that in detail, but something that as we maintain the plan and refine the vision, that I would envision that would be an activity that we could do with all of the jurisdictions.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that. Well, thank you for entertaining my question.
Really quick, yeah, thank you for bringing that up and in such wonderful detail. Being on this commission and the VRE policy board and also FAMPO, I see all the pieces. And so I think that it's important for us in Stafford. Just wanted to remark on this. And if you all see this as part of, potentially part of the vision, which you probably already aware of this idea, to potentially put a transit hub in downtown Stafford and make sure that land is gotten ahead of time. Okay, you're nodding, so we're on the same page here. So that's I'll set aside, whatever needs to happen there, that we all work together to make sure that happens, because that will provide access via bus to VRE. We've had all those conversations. One quick question: does the OmniRide bus fit under that bridge to go to the Brook station? Because I don't think.
I actually looked at that like a couple weeks ago. It's funny you said it, and I believe that bridge is 11.6. 11.3, yeah.
I could look it up real quick.
I mean, I would
But it
love
is
the
a
new bridge
sub-clearance
as soon as possible, but
Typical transit.
just
but-
something to have on the radar there, because that could be a potential huge issue. We'd have to move roads potentially or redo the bridge, so.
So one thing,
Or not, you could go all the way around by the landing.
some of the preliminary, the Brook Station, we have some concept designs, actually a little bit more advanced in concept designs. And we recognize that if we do anything, from an expansion of the Brook Station, we have to do something with that bridge.
Okay.
And with our partners at VPRA, they recognize that as well.
Good.
So that's in the mix. We will be refining that plan from just from a schedule standpoint. That'll be something that is likely, not just the plan, but the execution side of that. I think that's still a couple more years out but by 2030-ish, that station will be enhanced, but that bridge is definitely a target for it.
Commissioner Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for this. I think at some point it would be maybe good if we could get this presented in some way, shape, or form to the Board of Supervisors of Prince William County, because I think it's important to have that holistic view of what you all are doing, your outlook there, because I appreciate one of the very first slides you had in there, crossing the Occoquan Reservoir doesn't mean you're out of Northern Virginia. We're very much part of Northern Virginia. And again, to the point, a lot of folks that drive through Prince William County in 95 every single day are coming from other parts of the region. And it's important that we get this right. And so I appreciate that. And to dovetail and piggyback and support and uplift my counterparts, my commissioners down south from us, I know quite a few people that because of those challenges with Quantico will drive all the way to Ripon and get on a train there and go upward. to the point, that's still putting those people on the road from Culpeper, Stafford, Fredericksburg, where they're coming, and that's traffic, that's greenhouse gas emissions, that's all the things that we're trying to help reduce. And it gets to the point where some people, like to your point, why would I get out of my car at this point, especially now that they have the HOV lanes going farther and farther south, down towards Richmond. So I wanted to leave that with you and support my colleagues there. My question then becomes, as you look at other studies and other plans that have already been done, and I will always bring this up, and I know Mr. Horsley will appreciate this, DRPT Springfield Aquatico study that we did, what, 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, something like that, ish. Making sure that we're having synergy of planning that's already been done in the state. Because to me, that creates a great blueprint for us sitting here as both PRTC and VRE to say, how do we build that ridership and that true multimodal network, you know, from the Pentagon all the way down to Stafford, where we have express buses, we have BRT going up Route 1, we have the express VRE that you're talking about, which I think is great. And I also appreciate the admission of hours and the expansion of that during the week, because I know, again, tons of people that they would love to take a train up and come back, or they want to take a bus or what have you, but because they may want to stay in the city another couple hours because they have work or they want to hang out with colleagues, they can't do that as an option because then they're stranded. That's right. And so having that sort of full view of looking at the plans we've already done on the state level and really using that to, again, I hope will help us leverage more state and federal funding to help support that. Delegate Henson. I know we're adding you a lot, but you're a new member, so we're gonna haze you a little bit by talking. But we appreciate the partnership of the state, so I just wanted to highlight that. And then I do have a question over here, so I'll get to my question. Going back off the conversation about capital costs over the next, at this point, what, 25 years-ish to get to where you wanna go. Are there opportunities to look at some of the technologies being utilized, not only in other parts of the region, but other parts of the country, where we know that other folks are having a lot more innovations in rail? You know, smaller cars, smaller trains, smaller locomotives that run off of cleaner energy, hybrid trains, things like that, where you don't need this giant, humongous train if your ridership that's gonna go from on an express, for example, to go from one place at one terminal stop to Union Station, and really you don't need, there's no need for a huge train because you're not going to be picking up a lot of people on the way there. Is there a look at that as well?
Sure, and so let me just jump back on that cost component in terms of infrastructure, and I'll even add the rolling stock piece to that. That's based on what we know now and what we can price out now. Let me start with locomotives, battery electric technology, hydrogen fuel cells. In the locomotive world, that is, and I speak to this worldwide, that is being, you know, the more advancement and development on that type of technology is in the freight train, right? But we benefit from that. You know, they're the big guys. They've got, where we have 20 locomotives, they have thousands of locomotives. So we are closely monitoring that, not just VRE, but as an industry, right? So we have that. On the infrastructure side, interesting enough that, you know, the days of just simply to add capacity, you know, you go lay ties, you go lay rail, you go implement a signaling system and stuff. There's more advancement in signaling systems that basically provides, and I don't want to get into this whole, you know, block system and all that, but essentially it allows us to safely operate, you know, more trains in the same direction in closer proximity, frankly. And as some of you recall that have been here, went through the period at which VRE implemented positive train control. That was the foundation for those types of systems I'm talking about there. So, but as those systems mature, we can develop, again, from a maintenance standpoint, we can develop more accurate cost structures and stuff. You know, if everything was to stay static, technology-wise, then I would say those costs are likely to go up just with inflation. But I truly believe that because with technology enhancements, you know, we can mitigate some of that cost escalation over years because of being able to implement that technology. So, I think I got that. Train sizes, yes, that's definitely something, we're gonna take another holistic look at we have a companion fleet management plan and stuff. So that becomes, again, once we sort of set the vision here a little bit, we can come back and look at those fleet management plans that essentially right sizes our consist lengths or our train lengths, for the given service and for the given market, but it also gives us flexibility to be able to move things around when even midweek when ridership, on a Friday isn't that high. Well, we could do something different on a Friday with that equipment versus the peak of the week or even on the Saturday service. So
if I could just, one last comment. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Dalton, for that. Sorry to dominate more of the conversation, but again, I think this is why you're here, so we can have this dialogue.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that. The last thing I'll say is goes back to something that was said a little bit earlier. You mentioned in your slide is this could be the potential to help drive economic development to our counties, right? We know, to the chairman's point, Metro is a far on the horizon thing. So the next best thing we do is really beef up our rail infrastructure, because we know where those stations will go. That's where the cranes will go up. That's where we have our small area plans on the county side. That's where we're seeing redevelopment and revitalization, frankly, on that 95 Route 1 corridor. So as much as we can, as you continue to roll out this plan and we start to get to those KPIs in the implementation phase, you continue to interact with our, especially our planning departments, as was said earlier. So we continue to motivate and incentivize the proper development that's with TOD, as was said before, so we can get more businesses into the county and get more housing and affordable housing, because I know that's something that we all share as long range goals for our new counties.
So we're gonna go to you, Commissioner Spencer, but Commissioner Allen want to comment real quick to that. Is that a comment? Or
Yeah, it was just a quick suggestion I forgot to mention. I wasn't sure if you guys had engaged the base. I recently had a conversation about a few weeks ago with base commander, granted he's exiting, but the takeaway that I got was that Quantico is very much interested in being a partner in terms of transportation needs because of their own challenges they're having, and the fact that they have to commute so much of their people up to DC and the Pentagon area. So I would think as part of your long-term plan to definitely reach out to them and engage their people, because they definitely can be an asset in terms of especially that financial piece, that they can apply for federal fundings in ways that can close a lot of those gaps. And then maybe help with some of the restrictions on base access and stuff like that for some of their stations, for the Quantico station. So I just wanted to point it out.
That's perfect, because that rail is right there in the town, and that is Quantico.
And when DOD asked for money, they usually say no, so
that's a very.
And I just had the conversation maybe like 2 weeks ago. So that would be something that they definitely would be, to get them involved in the early planning so that they can be aware and they can adjust their plans as they make their plans too.
Absolutely. And we have engaged, Colonel Brooks.
Yeah.
Just, he's been relieved, right? Yes.
He's on his way out, June.
He's on his way.
Yeah. Yeah, next month.
With the Colonel, we've had, with him and his staff, looking forward to working with, the new commander and stuff like that. And staff. I will say our Quantico Station Improvement Project is, we should be completing that later this summer. And I think that becomes not just a good milestone, but a nice visual piece, if you will, for leveraging that conversation. So Christy.
Yeah, if I can just jump in for a minute. In addition to the work we're doing, the Northern Virginia Regional Commission is doing a study now that's looking at all the military installations in Northern Virginia and how to benefit and encourage more transit, and the issues with Quantico and access to base. It's common throughout all the installations in the region. VRE's participated in that, PRTC's staff participate in those discussions. So, between what we're doing and the direct engagement we've had and some of the regional efforts, hopefully we can, address how we can make it easier for people to use transit, not just to get to Quantico, but other installations in the region as well.
That's good to know. It's good to know.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spencer.
Thank you. So several things, and I don't even know if there are more comments probably than questions. I think that regional mobility is really important, and obviously VRE plays a big part in that. And I don't want to lose focus of the fact that if you're gonna do a 2050 plan, you said it in your presentation, there's going to be a lot more people living in the more suburban areas than what currently do. And those people are going to need to be able to move around the region, though, with the change in the work environment and buildings, who knows how that will all eventually fall out. But people do need to move around. One of the problems that Micron has in my area is the fact that they have people too that need to get in and out of the city, Crystal City, Roslyn, during the day.
Yep.
And, Commissioner Bodie brought up the fact of Metro, and I think that a couple of things about Metro. One, I don't even know if it is realistic to have Metro as far out as Prince William County when it takes you more than an hour from Vienna to get all the way into the city. You're really going to be the economic and ability of transit more so than I see Metro being, because you have the stations already, and we have the ability, if we can have more frequent trains than what we have, to be able to offer to move people around at those different times of day, as has already been said. I think that is here to stay from everybody that's in a base to someone who is just working for Amazon or Micron or whatever. The ability to be able to move around in the region is very necessary. And I know that on the Manassas line, we have that Norfolk Southern is not as easy to be dealt with as on the CSX line. But it's gonna be really important if we're gonna do all this housing out there. And I didn't see it, but I'm hoping that you're recognizing by 2050, we have, Manassas is already approved for commercial air service. So how you plan to utilize that with numbers is gonna be important. People coming in and out of there are gonna be wanting to get into the Beltway or on buses. And when it comes to funding, I haven't been able to do the math, but that's my biggest concern. Right now, VRE costs double the amount that a bus does for the average rider if they're just taking a trip. And we all subsidize that. I don't know what will happen in the future with the huge needs at Metro for subsidy as well. I know in the budget that we have to look at here, we really can't decrease your budget, but we have been able to decrease PRTC's budget. And we have to look at that feasibility to the taxpayers going forward, and since they are subsidized, and they should be subsidized, don't get me wrong. Bus service, train service, getting people off the road, these need to be subsidized. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But like everything else we have to look at in our budgets, there are limits. There's not unlimited funds for any good purpose that we all might think. So I do hope that as we go forward, like you said, technologies might allow for some of that. But I think we have to look at mobility, and we have to look at making it more attractive and more cost effective as we go forward to make it sustainable. But I only am concerned about the Manassas line because of Norfolk Southern and our inability to be able to do more out that way. And looking at even 2050, bringing in buses from Warrington and Fauquier and Culpeper, how feasible will that be? Those areas will be pretty developed by 2050. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Chair, let me just, I just want to make a note. We have more specifically through our Broad Run expansion project, we have been, tied to the hip, if you will, with the airport out there and having good conversations with them. In fact, I have another meeting with them next week. So and they have a plan, sharing our plan. And I know it was discussed before as, sort of a broader transportation plan for around that area as well. So we're collaborating together. And then I just want to make a note too. I know Nick showed a slide there, and you all, or several of you have referenced it. Those, basically at the southern end of our service area, those tentacles that lead out, that could be bus bridges and stuff like that. Because I don't want to walk out of here and throw anything at me. We're not suggesting we do the bus service.
Right.
If you will, we're just identifying that as a potential just because from a demand standpoint, we think that demand is gonna go up. But the trade-off, back to your point, you know, for us to go build infrastructure and do that type of stuff, a nice intermediate step might be some bus bridges and stuff like that, so. Good, Perrin?
We need to look at those people will have to pay a bus fee and then a VRE fee and then maybe a metro fee. So as it's been talked about, I know for the whole time I've served on this commission and others, the fact that we do need regionally to have a better way for people to be able to move from one part of transportation to another, because it's required in this region in order to move around without a vehicle. You have to, on almost all accounts, move from bus to train back to bus potentially, you know, so making it more cost effective to be able to do your whole ride somehow will have to be looked at as we all go forward. And like I said, for 8 years it's been discussed, but maybe we'll finally start having a little more headway as we go through some of this.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, good evening. As you may know, anytime they talk about money, they look over here. Maybe that's why Senator McPike so didn't show up today. But you know, hopefully if this comes in fruition, I'll be 57 looking at all of this. So, you know. So some of the questions I did have was relating to your population increase numbers. I guess I just wanted to know, how did you get there? Because I know when I'm in Richmond and I'm hearing for other counties and et cetera from Northern Virginia and Stafford and Fredericksburg area, they've been saying that there has been a mass exodus heading towards the Richmond area. So I was just kind of curious, how did you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Council of Governments puts out every so often an update to their regional population growth projections, and that's based on, at its core, what all the jurisdictions have in their programmed into their comprehensive plan. So if County A says, you know, this has 1 person per acre today, but in 2050 it's going to have 20 people per acre, they take all that into consideration, and then they also do the same with employment. And so there's a model, and there are people that are way smarter than all of us that know how to work that model, and they were able to, you can basically put inputs. If you put this theoretical transit service out there at 20-minute headways, 30-minute headways, based on that population, based on that employment, what kind of mode shift or mode share are you gonna get on the rail, you know, side of the equation versus road or other forms of transportation? At its core, that's kind of how it all has to work out. So, but it all comes from the county's comprehensive plans and their land use plans. Around the region.
Delegate Sewell run, they're talking about money. The second question, I was just curious because I did saw your plan, but I didn't see any slides relating to risks and what risks are factored into this plan. Like, for an example, what happened, as we know, in 2020, you know, every 10 or so years, there's something anomaly happening here. Is that factored into this plan as well? Or is this something that y'all are looking into hey, if ridership does decrease again, what happens? And only reason is, you know, the issues that we're dealing with WMATA and trying to bail them out on the state level and having those negotiations and having to go back in 2 weeks to pass another budget that hopefully Governor Youngkin will pass. It's I'd rather not be back in this sticky situation. If so, we do have Delegate Sewell here. But you know, those are the risks that are in your strategic plan for 2050 that you all are.
So let me just partly answer, you know, I'll partly answer it with the process. So the process being, you know, we're not gonna just, you know, basically adopt a plan and then just blindly, you know, move forward. So there'll be some toll gates built in along the way, cause us to recheck things, you know, demand, recheck. I mentioned, you know, not just that financial model from the revenue side, but the cost side, which is just as important. So there'll be some built-in toll gates, so we don't, again, blindly, not just the 2050 plan, but even up to the 2030 plan. So if we detect let's just say a leveling of growth or, God forbid, some other, type of, worldwide issue or something like that. That we can, adjust or put the brakes on it, if you will. That's an example. There's other potential mitigation measures as well, but that's a priority, again, as part of the maintenance regime for the plan.
Then my last question that I've written down is, for an example, you talk about like weekend ridership, whenever that happens, 2030, et cetera. And I think Commissioner Ability stated, because I am that person that I work in Maryland and I would love to stay later, but according to your schedules, I cannot do that. But in the events that there are events that are happening in the DC area, Northern Virginia area, et cetera, are there plans to work with those cities and counties to stay later in operations beyond 10 p.m.? So for an example, we saw last summer, I think Taylor Swift and Beyonce, a lot of their concerts did not end until 11, 12 o'clock. But if y'all end at 10 p.m., I think that creates a risk and a challenge for people who want to get up and down the road.
Sure. So just dive into a little bit of detail here, but with Transforming Rail in Virginia, there is a program plan, if you will, for planned infrastructure improvements. And it's a phased plan, and we're already executing. We being the collective us. DRPT, BPRA, Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, Coast Railroad, CSX, Amtrak, all of us are already executing that plan. At the end of planned infrastructure improvements of phase one, for example, in 2026-ish, there's a block of train slots out there for VRE to be able to go and do Saturday and Sunday service, which includes late night, etc. The other thing that we are actually reinstating, which is a program we had before, and we're currently working on reinstating a program where basically we have, what we refer to as cross honor with marked trains, for example. So they can leverage off of us, we can leverage off of them. That's in the near term. In the longer term, there's talk about having, marked trains come into, you mentioned Maryland, so I'm going there, but so my point is as this capacity is built out, it really opens up. And going back to what Chair Angry said right at the beginning, it's all about the Long Bridge. Once we get the Long Bridge constructed, which is an additional 2-track bridge over the Potomac River, plus a bike ped bridge adjacent to that, that unlocks a lot of capacity. That is right now the choke point, if you will, with having VRE, Amtrak, and freight trains out there. That is the choke point. Once we get past that, it really opens up a lot of opportunities.
Thank you.
So I want to pause and just take a moment to recognize our latest Commissioner Brianna Sewell. Welcome. Okay.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you.
Good to have you as part of this commission. So very happy to see you.
Just on record, she does sit on appropriations.
Wow.
Let us start off.
I was
Yeah.
And I also want to point to saying, so when we put our name tags out, these two can't sit next to each other. They sit enough of each other. We're gonna split them out.
We really don't. We're so busy.
Okay, well, okay, it's
We're
okay
still
for
gonna
tonight.
put you.
Next time, yeah, we still.
The chair.
Direct all the money questions just to that part of the room.
Unless we want to make Picos over that, we just ask all.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, that's good.
No, is that so?
Yes, yes, sir, so, was that all your slides? That was it? I thought it was gonna be.
I've got more, I just didn't put it.
No. Are we good, Commissioner, on the questions? It's great presentation, appreciate it.
Contact us anytime if you want to have further discussions and one-on-ones, anything like that. But this will definitely be a topic for us over the next couple of months, and I just have to, once again, Chair Green, Commissioners, very grateful with your time tonight.
Just very, very quickly, again, I just want to reaffirm, so be clear again, I would love for you or some part of this presentation to be brought before the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. I think this is key to a lot of what we've been talking about for the last couple of months. I appreciate it.
Knowing how accurately Nick takes notes, it's a top note on his notepad here, sir.
And I will say, I think, for those who either don't recall that trip when you rode the VRE into the city and got to see a lot of what this really means, we should do that again. So, that's, I don't know who set that up or how we set that up, but I think that'd be great for folks to really see that and really understand that, because that's the key to everything we talk about here. I think, for me, it's seeing and believing, hands-on, boots on the ground. So I think that'd be a great refresher tour for those, and a really good experience for those who hadn't seen it. So
And ride the bus to get you to the VR.
exactly, we got to do that.
I didn't do that.
That's why it's cool.
Now I'm asking for a lot, I know. But that's what your constituents have to do.
So I guess, sir, well, thank you for the presentation
Thank you
again.
very much. We're very gracious. Thank you for your
All
time.
right. Moving into public comment time.
Mr. Chairman, one person submitted a comment, and that comment and the response is in front of you.
Okay. All right, and so now moving on to consent agenda, which we have none. Okay. Dr. Snyder, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so ridership report, VREs are excited to have that 7,000 average passengers per day, which is great. We're seeing similar numbers in terms of our growth and our bounce back. We're very, very excited. We're seeing our weekday average on our express services for this year is hovering right around 8,000. So, and then for our Metro Express, local, et cetera. So we are having great ridership. We're projecting to see, that's our totals are 7,945 a day. So we're actually outperforming VRE right now, which is very, very exciting. So for all that. So then there's a reality of what we're here tonight, which is budget stuff. So I'll focus on the ridership, and then we can jump into the balanced budget service plan. So we have the ridership component. Just slow it. So preliminary ridership for March, average local weekday ridership about even. Total system ridership for the year will be close to 2 million, which is great. Staff will be on an all hands assignment for the week before our commission meeting, or a week of and the week after. We have a very big service change. It's the largest service change we'll ever have had in our history. So staffs were running training buses to train staff on where the routes are going to be going. For staff operations, very positive feedback. Drivers are very excited about it. We're excited about it. We have new bus stop signs that will be arriving next week. So we'll actually have those implemented on the eastern part of the county. If you've been on the western side, you've seen them a little more attractive version of it. So that's great. So we're very, very excited. Christina's contacted your offices for time to maybe stop by and review the new routes if it's affecting your district. So she's gonna, I think you're the only person that's accepted so far. So we're gonna make a second round, just so you and your staff know what the routes are. Chair took care of it. We want you to know what the services are, what the impacts are for your staff in case you get constituent calls that, hey, they changed the route, where's my bus? We started this process over a year ago. We're very, very, very excited, and I can't wait to see that ridership out. Really gonna turn things up for us. Very excited. We're also gonna be inviting all of you to come to different events. We're going to have customer and commissioner karaoke.
Oh,
No, right.
Curtis Edwards, our customer service manager, as well as our chair, are going to be doing karaoke at the front circle. So Alfie is rolling her eyes because she knows how to do it, coordinate it, but she doesn't have to sing it, but she can shoot. We're also going to just encourage you to come out and ride the bus. If you want to do something fun, like have a transit town hall on the bus, we'll identify the route, and you can just sit in the back and talk to passengers and get to know them. We really, really want that experience, and we'd love to see our commissioners be part of that experience and see the impact that the Octave has. We're very excited about that. Turn things over to Mr. Wingfield for an operations report. Sorry.
She wants to know what you're gonna.
My all-time favorite is Stumbling In by Susie Quattro and Chris Norman. So.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Billy Wingfield, General Manager with KLS. We operate the service, PRTC. I want to start by first thanking those who came out during the month of April to offer their support. Chair Angry, having you there is a really big deal. In fact, and all the others who come out, the people, the operators, as well as the others that support our service. are becoming familiar with the board. So it's really good to have that support and also for them to gain some familiarity with those who are kind of charting the path for us. Thank you there. Now, as we go into the first slide, April's performance reporting. This is a slide that I continue to go back to. We talk a lot about our commuter services, which makes up about 70% of the revenue hours we provide. We talk a lot about our local service, as Bob was indicating. It's going to be going through an overhaul. That makes up about a good 25% of our service, but we also have microtransit. That's what we're looking at here. Microtransit combined with paratransit. And this is our month-over-month growth from the far left, November, all the way into April. We continue to see ridership increases. That little gray wave at the bottom is where we're going to be focusing our attention. That is our shared trips. So essentially, instead of doing onesie, twosie Uber trips, even Uber has like a shared portion in the app. So the more people we can put into the vehicle, the better. Just gain efficiencies there. And then the red bars are on-time performance. So as we see service continuing to increase and riders using our service, we're still maintaining a high level of on-time performance. So keep that on the radar because that's something that strategically is going to help us in the future. One of our #1 challenges that you guys have heard about over the last several months is recruitment and retention. And so our microtransit, if we're able to diversify and cross-train our operators, it serves as a pipeline to our fixed route. And so it's something that's going to come in handy. And it's also been leading into some of the performance improvements that you'll see in the other slides in terms of our service reliability. So we go to the next slide. As I said, these are missed trips. I think at one point in time when we reported missed trips, it gives us an idea of service reliability. How much service we say we do on the public schedule versus how much we actually put out there. An idea why this is important, not overly happy to talk about it, but in 22, we were missing on average 194 trips a day. And then we went, a month, sorry.
Anybody taking the bus? Anybody taking the bus? I know, right?
There was no bus.
There was no bus.
Set the bus up. Where is it?
2023, it got ugly. And then 2024, we've been trending in the right direction and plan to continue to stay on that path. Next slide. Vehicle availability, never mind the typo at the top. We've continued to improve there. That's really a byproduct of, I want to give credit to the PRTC team in that we have new vehicles rolling in. And so with new vehicles comes a greater level of reliability. We appreciate that. As much as we would like to take credit and say that we're turning more wrenches, we're turning about the same amount of wrenches. But with the newer fleet, it helps us out a great deal. So next slide. Miles between service interruptions. Our guys in the back will be proud about this. This is a byproduct. Miles between service interruptions means how many miles are we going before we have any type of problem that would interrupt your service, right? As you can see in the past, we've done pretty good. That red line is our goal month by month. And with the new vehicles combined with some new recruited staff in the maintenance department that we're trying to retain, as you can see, fruits of their labor is paying off. It's a combined effort. And we're doing pretty good there. The month of April, we were at 33,000 miles between road calls versus just 1 year earlier, 7,000. And so very proud of that number and hope the staff is on line listening to this. And thank you guys for the work you guys have put in and staying consistent and showing up every day, even being short staffed. So very proud of those guys. With that said, I think that is the last slide I had in. I'll open the floor for any questions.
So I don't know if you all caught what he was mentioning earlier, but it was the bus rodeo.
That's correct.
Which was the like 3-day event. I got an award out of that because I showed up all 3 days. They didn't drive a bus. I showed up all. But it was a great event. It really was. And so we really want to encourage all the commissioners to really hang out with operators. Even if you came by here one morning, went down into dispatch where they, get assigned their bus and they go out on their routes, like, there's a window there. She won't give you any keys to the bus or to try, but you can
Security protocols for.
work with, everybody. Cause it's a very good group we got here. We're doing some great things. Those numbers are impressive. That's very good, man. So very happy to hear that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Chairman Agri. And Chairman Agri did come down and spend some time. Not only that, he also spent some time when Corporate Keolis was in town, and thankful for that as well. He also got an opportunity to see some live action. We had an accident that day, unfortunately. It was a non-preventable. It was a medical event that took place for the operator in the lane next to us that led to them swerving out of their lane. So although there was contact with the vehicle on the highway, the operator was able to safely make it over to the side of the road. Chairman Angry got an opportunity to see some of our cameras and the telemetry and the data and how it triggers and how to go back and see how that stuff works.
Live, like, so that says a lot to these buses and what they really cost, because that technology they have in that room downstairs was live, like real live time feed watching this. And I'm watching an officer on the bus talking to the operator, making sure they're okay. And they really have, it's just incredible to watch, because you watch this car hit this barricade, swerve back into the bus, and the operator control swerving out the way, which that bus could have easily flipped. Luckily, there's no one on the bus, but the fact of the matter was that operator, nipped it and really pulled off, and then everything happened. And the cool part is I'm sitting there in the conference room, we're talking about this, and the tow truck pulls that bus in, so we see that actual bus come into the shop, they pull it in, they take it in the back, and it's probably back on the road today, I don't even know, but it's just pretty impressive watching really what this all means. Like, there's an entire communication system that really monitors everything that happens. So there was, I know this is probably not the place where we brought this in, but I thought it was really cool to hear, like, before all these cameras got on the buses, as we were talking, that, the accident rate was kind of zero. It wasn't because it was an accident, it's because we didn't have the technology on the buses to really monitor some of the scrapes and dings that were on the buses. So the numbers went high because you never had that before. And now you have operators that are really trained well in handling these situations. And so that really brought it down. It's just really impressive to see that. If you hadn't seen it, you really should, again, take a trip down there and just kind of monitor, watch a day in the life of our operators on that screen. It was very impressive to watch. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I
Any
have.
questions for Keolis? None. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir.
So, we have a kind of a heavy detailed presentation to go through. I'll just keep the rest of the report short. Go to it, number 10. Okay. That's all. Budget is for anyone. Commission.
All right. Well, we always want to shout out Farron and his article. So he's got an article. If you hadn't gone and take a look at that, he's got that article for you. So we'll add it to the.
It's okay, I'm just gonna actually present from up here. All right. So what we have before you is your packet is the budget deficit action plan. The reality is, through our process, we are going to have to deal with what is a deficit in our budget, move forward. So we are here, May 2nd, commission meeting with budget and amendments and a balanced budget service plan. Where we then, never mind all the stuff before then, we had in this room on December 7th, a commission meeting and budget workshop. We then had a commission meeting with our proposed budget in March, which then gets transmitted to the jurisdictions. We've had budget presentations in Manassas City as well as Prince William County. And then during the process of that, we had a new number, but it was passed on last Tuesday. So now it's then reframing the budget and actually identifying what we're going to be able to do. We have still to conduct our public hearing on May 15th. So we'll have that session. And then on June 6th, we bring back a final to you of what we feedback from customers. And there's questions we want to ask the customer before we formally ask you to vote. Get some decisions we want to make. We want to get their input, their feedback, and figure out some different things from that. So where are we at in terms of this? Next slide, Chris. So key things that occurred on April 2nd, The budget presentation, we identified a $13 million fuel deficit. And then the Prince William County Executive recommended to fill about 70% of that. So moving forward, we identified what that would look like, and we had an information-only session. We can't suggest doing X or Y because we're sending it out to the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. That constitutes a public meeting, so we can't violate that. Plus, you guys are the ones who passed the votes on all this stuff. So we come back to the commission, we have an information-only review of the potential service impacts. The next day, it was recommended to add an additional $700,000 to bring the total to $9.8 million. And that's not coming from general fund, that's from different transit occupancy tax and different mobility funds and services. Prince William County used to provide general funds to the organization until 2008. And then starting in 2008, they stopped. And then last time we had a major budget crisis, they infused cash to the tune of 1.7 million. But then we were able to get the motor fuels tax adjusted and things self-corrected for a little bit. And then COVID hit, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we are today, is bringing you a balanced budget service plan. Priorities, continue our ridership growth. We are kicking butt locally as well as in our express service. We are a 50-50% balance in terms of what we consider our local versus express, and both are still growing. So they're growing nicely because what's good is you're not taking away, they're both growing naturally. It's very exciting for us. That helps us in terms of our commuter service for fares, as well as our formula grants, especially for our local service being 50-50. Continuing ongoing fiscal management and cost containment. One of the things that we've been able to identify, you just saw the maintenance reports. That lowers our cost per hour. That improves our reliability of service. That encourages more passengers paying fares. So these are the kinds of things that actually change the game. We have very good, reliable, excellent service. We've also taken the steps of reducing some admin expenses, non-essential professional overhead. And we did approach the state about, hey, it's a weird situation for Prince William, and that Stafford and Spotsylvania have never funded these routes, so they get the service for free on the express routes, but Prince William, because they're legacy routes, they're trapped in, continue to pay for them because they're legacy. And understandably, the state said, well, those were the rules that were passed way back then, and that's what we did. So it wasn't rude or anything, but that's something that's where we are. And the CTV would have to change. There would be change in laws, CTV, lots of different stuff. So that's where we are in terms of state assistance. Next slide. Immediate action, drop the operating expense that Prince William pays by $3.2 million. So what we did is we have to address locally funded express services first. The reason why is the local services, if you don't have an alternative on local service and we take it away, you're trapped. You can't get from Dumfries to anywhere if there's no Dumfries bus. However, if we move you from one park and ride lot to another, you drove to the park and ride lot. There's an alternative. So there's alternatives and options. So when we looked at what we could do, the locally funded express services made the most amount of sense for us. So what we did is approach of nearby alternatives, route restructure, consolidation. So the comment about love to be able to get home after late night in DC. Well, you can do that right now, but you won't be able to on some routes starting in August because of this plan. So we actually started to provide some of those solutions. But now we're in a situation where some of the solutions that passengers are riding, we're having to pull back through this process. So that's just where we look at span of service. Now we're ending routes that maybe we're running until 8:15, 9:15. They're going to be off the road at 7:50. So those are some of the examples. And then also trip frequency, fewer trips. Just right now, some routes have 10 trips in the morning. Now they're not. They're going to have 5. So those are some of the realities that we had to go through in order to balance the plan. Again, local routes don't have available alternatives. If you went back pre-pandemic, local ridership was less, and it only made up about 25-30% of our total ridership. Like I said, it's now 50-50 and growing. Our new Eastern service restructure mentioned June 10th, so we expect that to keep going even more. And we recommend continuing with 0 fares for local routes. I'll give a little bit of an explanation for that in a few minutes.
So if any of you have a question during the presentation, please bring it out now. So we'll save our comments if you have a comment to the end. But if you have a question during the presentation, let's get that out real quick so we can make sure we're all tracking on that. All right, thanks.
So to make an impact on this, one of the things we recommend is increasing the express fare by $2. We did this last year. We went from $6.90 to $9. We're recommending doing it again. Last year, we had one email of complaint, no other public comment. So we were like, wow, we kind of left money on the table. So the thing is, if we do it now, we won't be able to do it in the future for a couple of years because now we're going up too much. We're taking this as an opportunity also because we now have an unlimited ride pass through our app, and I'll show you some examples of that. As we increase our fares and we increase this monthly pass cost, we expect to bring in about $2 million in new revenue. But only about 650,000 of that we're actually going to receive locally. And the reason why is about 50% of services are state funded. So when we collect $2 million, $1 million goes against the grants. So it allows those grants to last longer. It's just part of the deal. So then we're also going to have service reductions. And when we do that, we're going to take those riders and put them either on state funded routes. So we lose the fares completely when we do that, or we'll lose the increase elsewhere. We don't know what riders are going to stick with us. So if as you'll see in a few moments, a Lake Ridge passenger says, well, no, go pound sand, I'm not riding with you anymore. We're not losing the $2, we're losing the $9. And so every one of those passengers that has that, so we really have a challenge here, because even though we're going to reduce services by 2.6, we're actually annualizing it to 3.1. And we have to run service for 2 months of the year that's unfunded in order to get there. So we end up having to take more out in order to balance the budget over 10 months instead of just 12. So it's a little trickier for us. Okay, getting into the fare elements of this. Why no local fares? You can't see all the numbers, and that's okay. What this boils down to is our estimated local route revenue will be about $450,000. That is less than what will actually cost to collect the fares. Why? You have to pay the cash counters. Now we have to start funding the mechanics to make all the repairs, never mind the parts. I'm terrified of how much it would cost. We haven't put a dollar bill through a fare box in 4 years. So that's the most expensive part of it. But that's the first wave of costs. It's about $650,000 because you have to have hired staff, 2 people, because 1 person never counts money alone, 2 people, then it has to be audited, it has to be managed, it has to be tracked. We have armored car services, we have banking reconciliation. Front desk now has to manage cash drawers. So now we have cash drawers, supervisors counting cash drawers, reconciling. It becomes a per hour drain on cost, and we have 2 facilities now. So that has a huge impact. However, commuter service, next slide. A little bit different. Smart benefits. Smart benefits right now is $315 to federal workers. So we can increase those fares, and if you're a federal worker, you don't feel the pinch because it doesn't come out of your pocket. So that's one of the advantages of doing this. These $2 million in new fares, we'll see about $1 million to offset principal and costs. Again, mentioned, we'll have some loss there. $1 million offset state's cost. Majority using $315, so there's no out-of-pocket cost to them. And we've been cashless. It falls outside the Title VI requirements. We've been cashless on our commuter fare since fall 2020. So this really helps migrate the passengers over to that $285 fee. Why not go for the full $315? Because what if you do want to ride Metro to see your friend in Crystal City, right? Or what if you do want to ride VRE because it fits your schedule or convenience that day? We want to have the flexibility, but still we want to bring in that federal cash. If this works, this helps us out tremendously. There was an experience years ago when during the government shutdown, though, like the 45-day one around Christmas, VRE didn't take a hit on their revenue because they had monthly passes. We lost $100,000. And the reason why is they were already out of the WMATA ecosystem for fare collection. We're still in it. So that's part of why we wanted to get outside mobile ticketing. WMATA just couldn't meet the needs of what we needed as a commuter service. It's a very different model on that. So really migrating to riders for unlimited ride pass. Next slide. So it's app only, $285. Gets the smart benefits well below out of pocket to a daily rider that doesn't have smart benefits. That would cost you $360 at this fare rate. And with stable revenue. Finance department is so happy if all the passengers did this, because then we can actually have a stable amount of money. We understand what the revenue projections are. We wouldn't have a revenue decrease over a snowstorm, right? Or 4th of July week, the Friday before Memorial Day, we wouldn't take that revenue hit.
I have a quick question, yeah. I mean, obviously, I agree that it would help with your assumptions, but what are you gonna do to help kind of push it? So you're gonna try, I mean, sometimes you also have to spend money to make money. So is there gonna be some type of marketing piece that you're gonna be pushing out so that, because everyone has a cell phone now.
Yes.
So is there gonna be the marketing aspect of it now to kind of promote this to get people
Definitely.
more into that?
There'll be a directed focus as part of this transition and change. For all of our public outreach information, we'll have it. We'll train all the operators so they know how to talk to passengers. Download this app, make this purchase, and then we'll, of course, our customer service department will encourage people to contact Smart Benefits. So this is a migration that we're doing, not just for the sake of the fare collection, but we really need to get this step done. We introduced this about February, is that right, Joe? January, February?
Yeah, it went live in February, but Smart Benefits only hits once a month. So March was the first month for Smart Benefits.
So we're now starting to see that increase as word of mouth. We go out to the commuter fare events, for example, Pentagon, Navy Yard, et cetera. We can talk to employees there and they can then start that migration. The more we do this, and that we'll do printed material, advertising, promote our Rider Express apps. There's a lot of different, or Rider Express alerts. There's a lot of different ways that we can target and get that information out.
I was like, the easiest thing about to put it on the bus, slap it on the bus, says they're waiting on the bus stop.
Yep.
It's like, text this number and get the app.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner Allen, because it takes me back to the strategic plan conversation we had a few nights ago. And I forget the name of the program now. Was that Best Employers for Transit or whatever it was? Are you gonna be hooking into those folks as well?
Yep.
Because to me, that should be a criteria that you get X number of employees hooked up to Smart Benefits to help them also advertise that.
Correct. Yep. And that's exactly part of the strategy is we go to the HR managers, we go to the Pentagon. Hey, push employees to this, it helps out. So it's definitely part of what we do.
I had one final question for that. Are you gonna have some type of follow-up metric to be able to say, okay, we need to be hitting these numbers every month to be able to get on target to where we need to go so that we can have that stability within our.
We want to. Our biggest concern is we don't know what riders we're gonna lose. So we're putting down that 650,000 collected. That is that metric. If we exceed that in terms of revenue growth or ridership stickiness is what we call it. So there's elasticity is when prices go up or you change routes, you lose customers. We're focused on the stickiness. How many people stay, they migrate to a different trip or they migrate to a different route. That 650,000 is there to represent our stickiness of what we think we'll get out of fare. If we exceed that,
I mean, it's bad.
then we have more options, which is good. So, all right, next slide. So now let's get into the service plan. Recommended changes on the I-95 corridor, it's a total of 708,000, and yes, this is net fuel and fares. So we've already accounted for the savings of not pumping or burning the diesel. We've also adjusted for fare collection. Some of this is guesswork in terms of will the passengers stay? We've looked at other attempts of reductions and try to figure out what we can do. Older models don't apply in a post-pandemic world. It's guesswork on some of this stuff. But look, we've had experience because we have been reducing our commuter services over the past couple of years. This is not the first time we've reduced our commuter services, to be clear. We've been dropping it down to see where passengers go. The route that gets the reduction that's on the street right now is Route 981 Lake Ridge. It's a savings of 292,000. The other portion of it is the US Route South 1 Pentagon, which is budgeted but not expended in this year. And the reason why is we had the strike, the service change immediately followed by a strike in January 2023. Because there was a driver shortage, that route never went out on the street when there was the service change. So we've just kept it back. There was also two others that never went back out on the street on the eastern side. We removed them from the budget. They were very, very poor performing routes. We knew it, we just didn't have a formal process. But there was no other reduction period to take them out. So this is the first time we've had a significant enough service change on the commuter side to bring these forward. So we're bundling these three routes, and that actually helps out with what the savings are. Next slide. So Lake Ridge, what does this do? As you can see, Tackett's Mill commuter lot jumps on DC, hits the Old Ridge Road, hits the 123 lot up on I-95, heads into DC and serves Pentagon, and then into DC, Originally, we had planned for elimination. The $700,000 that the county provided on the 23rd allowed us to preserve service on a couple of other routes, which did two things. Number one, more cash, but also fares, because those routes were going to take a pretty hit on fares. So now that plus a fare increase allows us to take it from 7 a.m. trips and 9 p.m. trips down to 4 and 5. So instead of having 7 different alternatives in the morning, they'll be down to 4. Instead of having 9 alternatives to come home in the evening, it'll be down to 5. The reason why, next slide. So there you can see Tackett's Mill, I'll just use the pointer, Tackett's Mill commuter lot right there. It is 1.5 miles into Horner Road. Telegraph Park and Ride lot is right there. So if those routes don't meet your needs, we have more robust service out of Horner Road. We can't fit Horner Road into the Tackett's Mill lot, but we can fit the Tackett's Mill availability into Horner Road, because Horner Road is the largest park and ride lot on the eastern side of Prince William County. In addition, there's concern, well, won't you get overcrowding eventually? Directly across the street is a 1,400 space park and ride parking garage that will help ameliorate the issues related to the overload of Horner Road pre-pandemic. So that's also something $700,000 did to preserve that route, so that come November, when that ribbon gets cut, we'll have a bus that can operate out of there on day one. Otherwise, that wouldn't have been able to happen. So if you do live in Lake Ridge, and that trip doesn't meet your need for the time span, or you need a little earlier or a little bit later, Horner Road's going to be your option.
Yes, sir. Sorry, quick question. And to the point, and I know it's optimistic thinking, but if we do overshoot, if you do end up overshooting and getting more revenue in, is there an opportunity to add some of that service back?
Yes, and that's the first route. We have it now down to, do we have a magic number on the per trip? It's 85,000.
About that, yes.
Around $85,000 for one trip for the year. That's up and back.
Sure.
So if we want to layer in one more, that's why that reduction, we can calculate that the way we did.
But if you have to add and it's subsidized and there's not the money there to do that, how do you add that?
So if we overshoot our revenue projections, for example, if all the passengers stay with us and stay sticky, we don't lose the ridership and people migrate over, then we can use those funds. We'll be able to evaluate probably October, November, and then we can add an additional trip in.
So quick question to the stickiness and keeping people as you change this system. Do you all have a plan to try and capture as many of those people that may be intending to not stay with you if that happens? Like, is there any kind of like survey that goes out ahead of time? That way you at least have their email or something, that way you can kind of do reminders.
Park and Ride lots talking to people specifically about.
Is there anything digital?
Yes, we'll have.
Collect their information just in case they
Yes.
don't, and then you can see how you can keep pinging.
We have a Rider Express program, so it's an alert program, so if updates information.
Right.
So that plus we just survey our customers for.
That's what I figured, so I thought that would be part of it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so that's the impact there. Again, $300,000 net savings on the eastern side in current active service, about 450. It takes out around 2,500 platform hours. So platform hour is the time the driver is behind the wheel. So deadhead time is the time traveling to get to the start. Revenue service is when the customer's on board, or customers can be boarded. So what you end up with is that route has about 2,500. That's about 1.5 full-time positions in operations. There's also this one, by reducing this, it removes 3,500 annual platform hours. So now you're talking another, they generally work around 1,600, so 2 more positions out of that. One thing we were very aggressive with in the conversations with Keolis is we don't want to see any layoffs. What would the number counts be? This does not have any layoffs of any employee in the organization whatsoever. So drivers don't have to be worried about their jobs. Mechanics don't have to be worried about their jobs. We're very conscious of that moving in. And Keolis has been wise and responsive, knowing budget scenarios. And they've been less aggressive in recruitment and now focusing on retention, because we need to keep our operators all the way through the service reduction. So we're going to have a hard time over summer, quite frankly, because natural attrition will occur. And that's good because it'll get us to that projection point. But what happens if there's more people that leave the organization earlier? We're going to struggle to fight some service. So that requires us to put together a deployment plan very aggressive deployment plan to address that. But again, this is budgeted, not expended. Passengers have already adapted. Most of these customers are now riding out of our 234. Next slide. And these are the two from the Dale City Mark Center. Passengers have already migrated. They're riding to the Pentagon, and there's a shuttle that leaves from the Pentagon to the Mark Center complex every 15 minutes provided by Metro. So that takes care of that. That one in particular is, both of these actually are state-funded routes. So they haven't been in operation. They were kind of targeted for likely reduction anyway. Just their performance wasn't good. Just because it's state-funded doesn't mean we should spend the tax dollars. We evaluate once we put our heart into it and we made our best bet to market it, get development, which we had done with both of these routes. That's why they continued to remain suspended and then removed from the budget. Next slide. I-66 is where the major cost savings to Prince William County come into place. And there's a little bit of history to this, as especially in the recent years, the opening of I-66 and the state-funded programs and the opening of the university lot, there really hasn't been a robust park and rides type service program out of 66. There was Cushing Road, then there was eventually the Haymarket lot, but we leased park and ride lot spaces from churches on the western side. University opened that up. When the university lot opened, it siphoned the ridership from all the other park and ride lots because it's so easily located. It's right by the interstate, and much of the population is in that Haymarket, Gainesville, and Bristow, Linton Hall area. You just get on 234, especially now that the bridge is there. It makes it so much easier. Balls Ford Road has been a war zone for the better part of 4 years. It's almost done, so they did a great ribbon cutting. But what has happened with all of that is the passengers have left the 602 route, Manassas to Pentagon, and they're almost all riding out at the university lot now. And that route is tied for #1 performance in our system. So what we're recommending is to eliminate the route Manassas to Pentagon and ask them to ride Gainesville to Pentagon Navy Yard, already in service, and it moves all of those customers to the state. And when we do that, that means we lose the passenger fares. It's not insignificant, but that's not the value of this. We bring you this recommendation regardless. We've been watching this for the better part of 6 months. We had our ridership retreat in mid-April and identified that there were going to be recommended reductions, not elimination, but at least reductions. So moving into this a little bit, I'll just go through the slides rather than cover them here. Chris, go ahead. So this is that elimination. So this is the Balls Ford commuter lot. For those who don't know the western area, traffic light 1, traffic light 2, there's the western facility, very close and convenient. And then you will just truly take the ramp nonstop all the way onto 66, exit at 43B, right hand, I think 3 traffic lights and you're in the parking lot. That's where the new Sheets is going to be. So that's for perspective on how close it is. It's 4 miles in 7 minutes. We'll find out from our customers. Well, we already know a lot of the customers left that service and migrated over to the university lot. This saves $1.2 million. So in essence, the state is providing the route, no longer Prince William County. Next slide. 601 is Manassas, the State Department. It's also at the Balls Ford lot. And the ridership is pretty strong. It's very similar to Lake Ridge in that instance. But we're going to recommend that move all the way out there as well. And there's a particular reason is we're going to move all of our park and ride services that are operated or based out of the Balls Ford commuter lot out to university, because now we get efficiency of economy and scale in one lot. What that means is they don't have to have as many supervisors. It's one lot. Provides more operational reliability. This was a suggestion that came from the operations team we're implementing, because if there's a bus issue, now there's other buses, they can make swaps. It just gives them so much more continuity and it's easier to manage. So making that recommendation, but it will reduce the number of trips from 10 to 5 in the morning. We'll go from 11 trips in the afternoon down to 6, and it will save 5,000 annual platform hours for $727,000.
Hey, Bob, this is Tom Gordy.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to add, just from a planning perspective. So when you take a look at the Balls Ford lot, it's in the middle of an industrial area. And you take a look at the university lot, they're building a Sheets there. They're going to be building other restaurants. And so surrounding that lot, it's going to become more of a commercial center. So there's more access to things like for breakfast, for coffee, things that riders might want to get before they get on the bus. None of that's going to be available at the Balls Ford lot. So you're probably going to see as that continues to get developed at the university lot, that's probably going to drive more people just because of the amenities and the conveniences that are going to be right there in the parking lot where OmniRide is picking these folks up. Just something to think about.
Yes. Absolutely the case. Something that with that, we're also moving one of our, quite frankly, it's our worst performing route in the commuter system. We're moving that out there because we think it's the same thing. It's in the middle of industrial park. It's been tough to get to. So we're going to migrate that out there and see what kind of performance we get. And if that starts to pick up, great, that's what we want. If it doesn't, then we'll look at some different alternatives for that being just our natural process of efficiencies and not wasting tax dollars. And that's a state funded route, so it's not a Prince William County thing. It's our service up to Reston. Ridership's not good at all, not good at all. But we're gonna put our heart into these things, and if we don't get some results by the end of fall, bring some recommendations in.
I just want to say real quick that, you know, the Manassas VRE is right downtown. That has not resulted in years past before the pandemic. But all of a sudden we had more business in Old Town Manassas because of the VRE garage. People come in, they get on the train, they brought their coffee with them, they get off the train, and there's a mass exodus to wherever they're going. People have places to go, so University Lot's a great choice for now, but I would have to somewhat disagree with Commissioner Gordy that I think that as all that area gets very developed and there's less potential parking and these routes become more and more demand because there are already ones that are, like you just said, top choice, and there's less places to park. There's going to start to be a conflict of the businesses there and finding parking for those people that are trying to be commuters. So that's something down the road. I realize it's not something for the next year to be looked at, or maybe even 2 years, but I would be concerned of getting rid of Balls Ford all the way down the road because I think you're going to need it when there's not as much accessibility potentially out of university.
From that perspective, just a couple of things to ameliorate that concern or limit that concern. There are separate parking lots. This really is the VDOT lot. That's where the residential growth is in that area. So we'll continue to see that. But once the lot's full, it'll be very much like a Horner Road situation where if Horner Road's full, that's why Lake Ridge was so important, right? Now we have the Woodbridge garage so they'll serve that purpose, but there won't be a Gainesville garage. So there will need to be the Balls Ford lot, which will become that overflow. Once upon a time, Cushing Road was too full. So Cushing Road was overflowed. That's why we had pickups at Linton Hall. We had to truly have other places to park because every lot was maxed out completely. Now that was our pre-pandemic life. Good problems to have.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that you brought that up. Thank you.
And then the other major change was a route restructure of our Route 60 Manassas Metro Express. Again, as we reduced services and trips last year, we tried something to see if we could maybe take advantage using the same number of hours in bringing the service down Route 28 in off-peak travel direction because the bus isn't going anywhere in the morning on 28 northbound. But it came down 28 through downtown Manassas Park, Manassas, traveled up over to the hub, all that area, and duplicated some of the services along our local routes. We're recommending to actually just instead of then we go to the mall, then we'll go to Balls Ford, then we'll go to Texas. We're lopping everything off below the mall. We already have local services. So instead of having a 1-seat ride for that trip, it now may require at a minimum 2, possibly 3, depending on where you're traveling from. At least the route that operates in this immediate corridor here is every 45 minutes. If it was on the route that serves Liberia area, it's only every 90. Again, we don't have great local service. And that's one thing I want to point out. That's worth pointing out. Our ridership kicks butt, but our frequency doesn't. And so the people that are riding with us are hungry for transit. And so one of the things we're looking at is, what else can we do? What other improvements can we make on our local service? We're excited about what we're doing on the eastern side, but we're looking at the western side going, our ridership's improving and growing, and we still have 45-minute frequencies on some of these routes. But what will happen is it'll leave them all. Likely, I don't know if we'll go suddenly or not, we're still figuring out the actual travel pattern, but it'll head straight up to the Balls Ford lot, so there will be at least travel through, because that's the fastest way to access the hot lanes. Into Tyson's and back, yes, sir.
Yeah, and if I could, I don't want to steal Commissioner Gordy's thunder on this too much, this is his area, but I know as a board, we'll get major plans to redevelop Manassas Mall, that area, for example, and that sort of entire corridor as redevelopment corridor. So just to key it up, just like what Commissioner Sebastian was talking about, that long-term view of the next 5-10 years, well, you'll see a lot more of that transit oriented development pop up around there, where it currently is more of that strip mall culture. So knowing that, hopefully that's what we'll get. So hopefully we'll be able to either, to your point, increase the frequency on those local routes, or eventually bring back some segment of the route you're taking away, because there'll be a lot more people in that area who will be hungry, to your point, to travel on a bus on the Sunday quarter instead of jumping in their car.
Yeah, Bob, let me just add, we're working on putting together a corridor study for that area. And we absolutely want OmniRide to be part of that conversation, because we want to build transit into the development. So we don't want it to be an afterthought. We want it to be part of the plan. And so as we initiate that corridor study here in the next month or so, we certainly want OmniRide at the table.
Wonderful, we'll be there. Although this does reduce the total service, the segment that we're eliminating is the least productive from a standpoint of ridership. It is the most productive from the mall forward. So here's what's interesting is right now our morning AM peaks are 30 minutes. So we're also reducing how often it travels. But midday, it's every 60. We're gonna go 45 minutes all day. It's a balance between the two. And it's an operational reason because the bus can get from the mall, Balls Ford Road to Tyson's Corner in 45 minutes, and it can come back in 45 minutes. So these are some of the operational considerations that come in, because if we did it every 30 minutes, it would require more buses in the morning. Right. Well, that means more split shifts for driving, which is harder for operations to recruit if you drive for 3 hours and then don't come back for 5 more, and then you work for 5 more. So you're spending 12, 13 hours to earn your 8-hour paycheck. So these are things that help them in terms of operational continuity, makes driver recruitment easier. And this is every 45-minute service to Tyson's Corner. It's an easy way to advertise it. So next slide. And just like we had those routes on the eastern side, we had one route on the western side that I think it ran for 4 days. And so what this was is we created, once I-66 opened and we moved all the service out, this was designed to make sure people that were traveling from Linton Hall, which we had leased spaces, and Limestone, where we had leased spaces, they could still get to the park and ride lots. We were afraid that there would be a lot of passengers who wouldn't want to make that drive. So we ran it for 4 days and no one rode for 4 days, so we took it off the road. We notified the board. No, when I say literally no one's riding, the bus drove around completely empty for 4 days, and they're like, no customer complaints. We pulled it off the road. With the driver shortages, 0 complaints. We notified the commission at the next meeting and kept it off the road, and that's just how it happened. That was truly designed to project and possibly solve a problem we didn't know if it would exist yet. So, but it was service hours. It was it's a straightforward reason for why, and we were wide when we got it. All right, next slide. The recap, option A. This is what we're asking you to do. Option A is bless what I've just presented, the $2 fare increase, going to $2.85 up by 20 for our monthly pass, reducing the services we just described, moving all Western Express service to the University lot. It's about 45% in trip reductions between those 2 routes, one in Manassas, one in Lake Ridge, and then we're going to truncate and reduce the Metro Express. And the reality is we have to take out about 3.1 million. We don't know what fares we're going to lose. We don't know what customers we're going to lose with their fares. We're shifting some fares over to the state, so there's a loss there. And then we have to operate 2 months of all of this service within an unbudgeted part of the fiscal year. So what we're also going to do is, let's go to the next slide. So that's option A, that's what we're asking for. That's the recommendation.
Just one clarification, because you said $2.85, but you meant $285.
Yes, I'm sorry, $2 on the one,
Yeah.
going up by 20. I apologize. So
Just to pull that.
I've thought about this nonstop for about 30 days. Option B is if you do not do the fare increase and say, no, you did one last year, then we do truly have to reduce services by 3.2, which is really a 3.8 million, and now we're eliminating all of language. We're eliminating all of the Manassas to Pentagon. We have to keep some level of service out to from Manassas to Washington DC, and you can just see what ends up happening with the rest. So we strongly recommend option A. Tonight, we're gonna ask for a vote for this. The reason why is we have to get to public hearing. Because if we don't get to public hearing, we can't find out what the torches and pitchforks are. We want to hear from our customers, say what works, what doesn't work, and we want to share it with you. So that's what option B would look like. Next slide. Waterfall effects, just to let you know, we are immediately after tonight, whatever is voted will trigger a Title VI review. It's a requirement from the federal government. It's the Department of Justice actually performs this review through FTA, their Office of Civil Rights. We don't know what the recommendations will be or their requirements for action. I don't think for what we're doing, we have much exposure. And the reason we don't have much exposure is there's alternatives, especially in express services. So they're focused on those minorities, seniors, and low income. Those are the three primary corridors we're looking at for this. Doesn't have tremendous impact on that population by census blocks. So we've looked ahead, we're aware, and there are alternatives, and that's the biggest difference. We will see a little bit of minor impact to local routes. So as part of this, the planning team, they have to adjust a little of this, adjust a little of that. We have to reprint almost everything. We're already doing it for our local services, but even express routes that aren't going to change, we make references to other routes that don't exist anymore. And so those are the kinds of things that we'll have to work with. You see the rest of the stuff. That last line is an aggressive timeline for the eliminated routes and segments. An example, yes, ma'am, please.
I was just going to ask about like the reprints, like those are like the maps that you have at the stations. that
Paper
people
maps
look
on
at.
the bus, and a lot of digital, but man, oh man, people love the paper map.
They do.
They love
That's
a
what I was
paper
gonna,
map.
yeah, okay.
So, and the good news is once a passenger learns it, they don't use the map that often.
Great.
So because they learn their trip, they learn their habit. But man, oh man, passengers do in fact love their maps. Mention the aggressive timeline. So for example, once we know this, if this ends up being approved for the budget, as soon as we get our local service redesign going, we're gonna start talking to our customers. For example, if we know that route's gonna be eliminated and going to the Pentagon, we're gonna start talking to customers to say, please start going to the Pentagon. Because if we can turn that route off, we save all that money. We save the fuel, we save the labor. It helps out operations for later in the summer, where they're worried about, well, how can they get service out? So we're gonna be aggressive. We don't know what that timeline looks like of the official service change. We won't know until the next, we'll know by the 6th of June. But operations needs their time to go through and figure out what can they actually get done. This will be the fastest service change we will have ever done in this organization.
You know, we talked about the Title VI situation last week. Do we have any preliminary numbers on that? Because once we say pull the trigger on A, we can't go back. So did we do anything to try to give us a clue as to what the impact would be?
We've looked at census blocks. It's a little tricky because the park and ride lots are close to some of those areas. However, demographically, our survey that we did most recently shows the utilization is generally not by those disaffected areas, and there are alternatives. So what that means is the low income senior or the low income minority, that those demographic groups are not riding those express services. So they are not getting the disproportional impact. If we'd have done this with the Dumfries route or the Lake Ridge route or the Woodbridge route, FTA would be down here stomping all over top of us because we would have taken local service away and kept it for rich, predominantly white and wealthy federal workers, and they would have come down and stomped us.
So quick question on that, if that's okay, is that's what the review is meant to safeguard against, so that even if there was an issue, the review will be triggered and then they would let us know if there were any issues. We're not anticipating anything. option A.
Yeah, we did the preliminary work as part of this process because I would not bring you something. I would not recommend something to you that is gonna literally have create a civil rights violation.
I'm sure.
Of the
I don't think how people will not appreciate it.
I will never bring you a recommendation to violate the 1964 Civil Rights Act,
We appreciate that.
period.
Whatever's left of it.
So now, there may be something we didn't consider, something we don't know,
Yeah.
but that's what the review does, is there something we missed? And so that's what that does, but we have very talented staff, Cynthia Porter Johnson, she's been through multiple service reviews of this type, she's looked at it, she's not here tonight to speak on it. But she was here the other evening when it was discussed, and she affirmed the very things that I'm talking about. So I have high level of confidence in this, not a guaranteed level. But I stand behind this, and quite frankly, I'm very proud that we're not affecting local routes. We're already going to be working on cleaning out the inefficiencies on June 10th. So the staff has been working to do those kinds of things, and we're really, really excited about that part. Where we go for our next steps, take our amended budget to the public. Lake Ridge customers are gonna be mad. Okay, we're gonna take that information. And, the customer who wrote it tonight is a Lake Ridge writer.
Yep.
So we'll share this information and then we'll share it back with Prince William County and this commission, because we want the elected officials, all elected officials for Prince William County here. We owe that. So we'll do that, our usual requirements of notification, publication, notifying. It's a lot of work to do the notification, but we do it. And so the hardest part that worries me most is we're gonna have to release something to our passengers tomorrow. Then we gotta get in front of our drivers, because there's gonna be a driver who pulls up to a lot and is gonna get an earful from a passenger who doesn't have and that driver hasn't been properly briefed. So those are the things that are keeping me up at night in terms of how we roll this out. But getting that information, and we're gonna come back to you, not just with the feedback, but we're gonna talk to our passengers and ask them, are you guys likely gonna stick around? Are you gonna ride with us? And if the Lake Ridge passengers say, yeah, I'm not going anywhere, or I'll go down to Dale City, we can count on those fares. Maybe based upon feedback, maybe there's a trip we can add back. Right, so that's what we're gonna be doing, if we can identify solutions. So, but with the unknowns and what the impacts will be, we come to you on June 6th with final approval, that's what we're gonna ask for. And then we'll implement a service plan, we'll let you know exactly what the date of it will be, but I'm also gonna likely ask for some authorizations to suspend routes early if the ridership levels drop. This is a trust and performance thing of the team, that if we have empty buses going to, customers have gone to the Pentagon, we can drop that trip out, talk to our customers. Because we don't want to lose the customers, we want them to actually keep riding, that's the single most important thing that we do, is transport people. So helping them, lots of information, this entire staff is gonna work its butt off over the next 90 days. Not only are we gonna be out there for weeks for our local service change, we then have to implement a commuter service change, and then we have to stand at park and ride lots from 4 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the morning, also over summer, to help our customers out. But we're not a huge staff. So that's one of the single biggest challenges we have. And then one last thing for this is, then we're also going to assess our funding resources for FY26. So for example, we want to come in, make sure everyone knows what the motor fuels tax is gonna look like. A reminder of that, right? What funding that Prince William County did provide, did not provide. What are the resources? What are opportunities? We're also going to come back and say, what is bus advertising revenue? What potential could there be in that? What are the risks in terms of free speech, First Amendment issues? For example, the state does not permit shelter advertising. So there's the limitations there.
What?
Yeah, shelter advertising, it's permitted on state highway. So plus, to be honest, there's not a lot of advertising. I mean, look at, where's all your billboards? I don't know if anyone in Northern Virginia notices, we don't have billboards here.
I like the artwork.
So those are the cool things that we can try to identify what works and what doesn't work. A lot of this stuff works in Richmond, because Richmond is a dense capital city. It's not really great advertising. It's 65 miles an hour when a bus passes you from behind and all you can see is the swirl of that. There's not much, and so the advertisers don't even like to use us for some of those reasons. But we'll bring all that to you probably for the September meeting. That was a suggestion from Supervisor Gary. We will definitely bring something. Sorry, Commissioner Gary. And do that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate the due diligence and, what you had to go through to come up with, a creative solution to a budget problem. Some of us have had to go into our general fund for a while and, it isn't easy to continue to fund, but it's important. It's very important, to our communities. My question is, and not actually for you, it's actually for Prince William County, because I'm concerned about some of the cuts that you had to make, not all of them, but some of them, losing ridership is the opposite direction to go. We just sat here and listened, and talked for an hour about wanting more service on VRE, but you move more people on buses. And yet we talk about cutting service, and that is concern to me. So I will be honest, I didn't watch your meeting. I don't know what the discussion amongst the supervisors were, but clearly you approved this budget. So would you all, one or all of you, maybe especially Commissioner Gordy, whatever. It's been too long. It's too late. Anyway, explain to me the discussion that you all had as a board to come to this conclusion and cutting service. And I think that might help tell the story that we might have to tell to some of our, I know that I'm gonna have to tell to some of my constituents who will be impacted by this change.
Nobody raised their hand.
I asked this previously, there wasn't much that came. It was more like I would have to go back and watch the video.
Yeah.
I think it was tense.
Well, guys, I'll add some perspective. So when we take a look at our transportation requirements in Prince William County, and remember, we're a pass-through county, and right now we're dealing with a whole host of different challenges related to our transportation in terms of maintenance, in terms of traffic on the Prince William Parkway, just getting to 66. We've got a lot of challenges on Route 1 and managing, a lot of those updates. And in order to fund PRTC, we were going to have to take funds, future funds that were allocated to help us meet all these growing transportation challenges that we just felt we could not sacrifice. It really was just trying to come to a balance. And so at the end of the day, we still increased our spending for PRTC by $9 million. The original request was about a 70% increase, which was the largest increase of any line item in our budget. So you can begin to understand that, yes, we had to make some challenges. And there are some other things in our budget that we did not fund. This was not the only thing that did not get fully funded. So, we have many transportation challenges in Prince William County. And so we're trying to find the right balance and working with our transportation department and looking at all those issues. This is where we rested in order to try to find that balance. So, yeah, these are hard decisions. But we don't have an unlimited supply of cash. And we're also having to look forward to the future and ask ourselves, are we setting aside the appropriate amount of funds to ensure that we're meeting all of our needs for transportation? Yeah. So to sum it up, that was pretty much the major parts of our deliberations in a nutshell.
And Commissioner, let me just add, because I think we could do this really all night and it'll go too kind of deep. But let me just add to, I think to sum this whole thing up, and we've been discussing this for many years, our well has run dry on the motor fuels tax, right? And so that tax for the county also ties to our transportation road project. So the word of the day was, this is unsustainable, right? And so that number that, Commissioner Gordy just mentioned that, Dr. Snyder presented was a really big budget increase. And so we know that during COVID and the year 21 and 22, we had all this free money and everybody was happy because the budgets were very big and we did a lot of stuff. And then when that all went away and we have to come back to the reality of how we're getting back to funding, we have to have a real discussion, what it looks like. So regardless of how you perceive that large 70%, I mean, when you look at what we're doing with buses and the people on it, and and our operators and our Keolas and, you know, the fact that we went through a strike and they actually did more pay increases for the operators and moved their scales. And so the numbers went very big. So we sit in the place really today to really talk about as commission still how we're gonna fund our PRTC system going forward, because that is a number one discussion. They be not for this budget we're talking about, but at some point we have to have a real discussion because we've been kind of, and I hate this word, kicking this can down the road, but it's in our face now to really figure out how this is going.
And that's why I say this, and thank you Supervisor Gordy for stepping up and commenting. I got elected in 16. First time I sat on this was when Manassas already was facing this. I think you all have had the benefits of somewhat of not having to, where a lot of us have already had to go into our general funds in order to fund transportation. And that is my concern, which is what you just said, Chairman, that next year, are you going to say, well, we're just going to have to cut more because we've got to build a road? We all have roads that we have to build. I have many roads in the city of Manassas that have not been paved in 40 or 50 years at all. But I've got to get people on buses and out of single vehicle operating vehicles. So it's not a matter of the haves and the have-nots, or we have to do this, we don't have to do that. And I get it. We all have these, and I will say to the people of Prince County, you have data centers. You have a lot of data centers. You have a lot more data centers coming on board where some of us don't have that ability, right? So and not that that's the answer to the world's problems. I get that. We all have raises for our staff that we've had to deal with. And, but I'm concerned that we're going to be sitting here a year from now and Prince William saying, once again, we're gonna have to cut more bus routes. We're gonna have more people that we're gonna have to say, I hope you won't stop riding the bus. That's the opposite of the mission of this division.
If I could, and Commissioner Zabesky, thank you for bringing that up. And I agree a lot with an alignment, a lot of what you said. And that's why, to add a little bit more to it without going too far in the weeds, we did talk about that. We talked about that, the need of it to be a more long-term sustainable conversation about how we fund our transit system. So we didn't want to, there was a balancing act, as Commissioner Gordy said, of, hey, if we just funded the way that we funded the PRTC this year, we would eventually run out of money out of the funds that we're using for it. So we did talk about the fact that coming next year, for example, I did give a directive at the end of our budget option to look at a new revenue source that is dedicated to transportation, because that's where we landed, that as of next year's budget for Prince William County and onward, we're going to need to identify dedicated funding for this transit system. We weren't ready to do that quite yet this year, since it sort of came in the middle of our budget process, but we did get pretty good commitments from a lot of folks on the board that in some way, shape, or form, we will be looking at dedicated funding next year. Now, there'll be a fierce debate on what that revenue stream looks like, because we know that revenues usually mean some sort of tax or something like that. But we did say that we're committed to having that conversation. So to your point and your concern, we won't be in the same situation here next year where it's sort of like, hey, we're flat-footed, we're gonna not fund something. We know that we need to keep funding this. We know that we can't continue to have cuts every year to our services.
Commissioner
I was just gonna say, being that I guess I uniquely work for Prince William County now, work on the western side. I would say that I am in favor of option A. And so maybe if we can move towards a vote and then we can have discussion, and that way it's already there.
If you move that, I'll second her
So
motion.
I'll move for option A.
So we have a motion on the floor for option A. Now, well, were you good there? You're done?
That's what I was actually just said. Don't forget, we need an actual motion. So
Okay. Now, the motion we got a second. Commissioner-
Yeah.
Very quick question.
Mr. Chairman?
Cody's.
Yes, is that Frank? Is that Commissioner Franklin?
Yeah, I'll wait. I think that was someone else. I'll wait. I have
I'll be
actual
really
comments.
fast. Thank you so much.
1 second, okay, yes, Commissioner.
My question was just when you said that you gave a directive for, your board is going to be considering a funding stream for transportation. Did you mean specifically for transit or transportation generally? Because my understanding is that there was there was competition within transportation funding.
Sure, it's transportation generally, but there was a general consensus that at least some of it should come to PRTC.
Okay, good luck. Thank you.
Commissioner Franklin, floor is yours.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, you all for the conversation. You guys kind of know where I stand on the general topic of funding our transportation system, and I know Delegate Henson is there. I'm not sure if Senator McPike is there this evening, but my take is that the General Assembly has to step up and do more. Localities can't continue to figure out how to do this on our own. Obviously, we can't continue to rely on the motor fuels tax that fluctuates anyway. And I know that we got some good champions with Senator McPike and Delegate Henson. And so I would just say we have to continue to lean on and push the General Assembly to find an actual dedicated funding stream towards local transportation systems. They did an excellent job last session in helping to keep the VRE afloat. And that was necessary. I mean, because of COVID, our transportation systems were in dire straits. We don't have the federal COVID funds anymore, or that's slowly running out. So we really have to figure out, what does transportation funding look like on a local level? We don't have the metro here, so we don't have to worry about the burdens financially that they are going through, but we have our own challenges. And I think the chairman said, this has been a long time coming, and we're finally here. I will just say, for my part, I'm not comfortable supporting any type of service cuts, but let me also say that I have to commend Dr. Schneider and Chairman Angry, because they have searched high and low on how to figure out how to come up with the money. Supervisor Gordy mentioned Prince William County is stepping up to the tune of $9 million. And Dr. Schneider has worked really hard to find where the rest of those cuts are. So we do need to acknowledge that, and acknowledge over the next 90 days the hard work is going to take to inform the public. For those that have been on PRTC for a while, I know Pamela Sabeski and maybe some others in the room, whenever there are service cuts, we get the emails, we get people that come into public comment time, and we're held accountable as to why this is happening. Now, we have very good reasons as to why we do the service cuts, because we have to figure out where the money is going to come from. But I won't be supporting this, but I do want to make it clear that Dr. Schneider has gone over and above to figure out how to make PRTC whole. And yes, next year we'll be back having a discussion about how to make it whole for future budgets as well. So just wanted to put that out there, but also acknowledge the hard work that staff has done, and Chairman Angry. I mean, people don't see the discussions that happen off the dais, and he's really had to spearhead a lot over the past couple of years with the strike, and now with figuring out the cliff for PRTC. So, Mr. Chairman, you ought to be acknowledged for that as well. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for that, Mr. Franklin.
I have a quick question for
Appreciate
Mr. Schneider. I know you mentioned earlier in the presentation that one of the challenges with Prince William County is the fact that I can't remember the exact phrase you used, but grandfathering as it relates to the state and them asking the state for that federal funding piece.
For the express commuter.
For the express, yeah. Is there a way, and maybe the Prince William commissioners will be able to answer that, but is there a way for them to start the process and get the General Assembly to re-examine that? Because that is going to be an issue for funding, because right now we're going to have to keep cutting the express routes or the larger routes, because we really can't touch the local routes right now. And so maybe if they start the process sooner to get the General Assembly prepared as they go into fall, put it on their agenda to start considering that because of potential repercussions.
I think we all need to talk to our electeds in Richmond from all of our jurisdictions about the importance of a better transportation plan for the entire state, especially the local services that each area has. Because it's majorly
It
impacted.
just seems, like, it's, first meeting in and blam.
Well,
But y'all
it
used
would be
to-
great that
Yeah.
I would say that as a commissioner for a solid hour and 29 minutes at this point in time. I think that it's really important though, like in all seriousness, that we acknowledge that this isn't an issue that just began with the pandemic. This has been an ongoing issue. When I worked for Congressman Jerry Connolly as his Prince William District Director, we had this problem.
Yep.
You can go back and read the news articles before Mr. Schneider, Dr. Schneider even got it here. We had this issue. I actually would love a little bit of clarity. I really don't feel like we got it as far as why the Prince William Board of County Supervisors chose not to fund it fully. Like you still cut the taxes, locally, like there's a lot of conversations that could have been had. Like,
Yeah.
we could have maybe not cut it by like half a penny and we'd actually be able to fund this entire program. So it's just, there's a lot of options that are on the table. So before we blame the General Assembly for our actions, I think it's like really important that we all like identify true solutions and move forward together.
And thank you, because I think at this point in time, it's perfect that you're on this commission because you literally know the backstory well back into the day. Like, we all know, the only reason we're talking about it now is because we can't say it anymore. Like, I got it in 2019 and I've always known that the motor fuel tax, everyone said the wells running dry. Now, it's clearly been a discussion well before even Dr. Snyder's time. And I really think everybody on this commission, maybe not you two, I think you two might have been here to hear all this back in the day about the discussion about motor fuel tax. But, and so even with Prince William County's decision, let me just be brutally blunt here because it came down to a question of sustainability. This can't be sustained. And really because you have two competing interests, right? We have transportation road projects on one side, and we have a bus system on the other. And so the discussion is, well, there's too much money here now to put into the bus, or some of that money, most of that money, or whatever that money. Now I got my transportation in the back, so I don't want to get Megan up there mad at me. But we got some road projects and things that go on too. So there's those discussions. I've always been looking at, I think for PRTC, when you talk about funding stream, this system should have its own funding stream, so it doesn't compete with anything and then we need to be making those decisions about how we're spending that money, right? And how's that money coming in? So, there's really more to that discussion. I can only give my 1/8 as a board member for Prince William County in mind. So you're gonna get 7 more of those views and opinions of their thoughts on this process. Again, that's what democracy is, right? Majority votes and we put it in place. But I will tell you, at the end of the day, I'm really happy to see you and Anderson and Commissioner McPike, because you all will bring a different viewpoint and really some answers to how do we solve this? And because I gotta say, Commissioner Franklin has been saying that since I've known on the board that we need to get Richmond involved or the delegation involved, and how do you all help fund public transit or whatever that. So it's a discussion. I think it's great that we're kind of here having it now, and it's gonna be more to go with that. Be quiet. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. No, I'll be really quick. We are grateful to have you all here. I think,
Yeah.
I think this is pretty much the consensus, so don't feel like you got, beat up too much. There's a constant balance of what we try to do locally and then the state. Obviously, we're gonna ask you for more money if we think you can get it. We think you can. We believe in you. So, so I think there's that. But I just wanted to say, and this is not meant to be, just for clarity from my position regarding Commissioner Franklin's comments about cutting the service. I don't see, just for me, that I'm cutting the service and that's my decision. That's something that has to happen because of the decisions that were made from the board in Prince William County. What I see that I'm doing and voting here for is voting for the option that staff has worked very hard to come up with that will give us the best situation with the unfortunate situation that we have with the lack of funding. And so I just wanted to clarify that I would never vote to just cut service. I think we're in this position. It's very important. I'm happy to support the work that you all have done and option A for this.
I totally agree with Supervisor Garrett, unless there's more money somewhere that Prince William's come up with that we don't know about. I guess I'm not.
Are we moving into a vote now?
Yes.
Yeah, we're moving.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, I think we're moving into a vote.
Victor Angry.
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
No.
Tom Gordy,
Aye.
Karen Mills,
Aye.
Kim Short,
Yes.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary,
Aye.
Pam Sabesky,
Aye.
Jeanette Ritchel,
Yes.
Shannon Holmes. Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Rosia Henson Junior,
Abstain.
Brianna Sewell.
No.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So we have a second action item, and that is to authorization to amend the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission bylaws, second reading. Ma'am,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to assume you don't want to linger over these. We discussed them at the last meeting because there was a required first reading. There was a long discussion. There was a change that was made or recommended for tonight with respect to alternates being allowed to attend closed meetings. Clearing up that issue because it had not been clear before. All the other amendments that were submitted to you with respect to how the vote is made by the commission on members of the VRE Operations Board. Small changes allowing the chairman with respect to some authority with respect to meetings when there are problems and altering that. Removing the requirement for roll call votes, so you can do that the next time if you adopt these tonight. And then allowing the executive committee to have the same ability to vote on matters that have to be urgently handled before commission meetings, subject to commission ratification. So I'm glad to answer any questions or talk further, but there is a proposed resolution before you.
Motion
So
to
moved.
Second.
Motion.
okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Gary and I have a second by Commissioner Allen. Any discussion? We can get into discussion.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Oh.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yes,
my apologies. I'm reading what's on the screen, but sorry, can you just give a 1 sentence, 2 sentence summary of what this does again?
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Did
If
you
you
hear?
have the resolution, I don't know if that's a slide, if you do that. It's in the resolution. I'll do it one more time.
No, I just need 1 or 2 sentences. Please don't do it the whole thing again.
Basically, it corrects some language with respect to the master agreement on appointment of commissioners. It makes some
Understood.
changes to facilitate meetings, and it makes sure that alternates can attend closed meetings, and it gives the executive committee more authority so that it can act when there's a need to do so before commission meeting.
Yes, and thank you for that. And the reason why I asked is because, we've been having this discussion for a couple of years now about alternates joining closed session, and I think that they should. And so, yes, very, very happy that we're finally codifying this.
Yes. And I'm happy that Christina doesn't have to do roll call. So, okay. Any more discussion, questions, comments?
This is our last roll call vote.
Okay.
Our last roll call vote?
There you
No,
go.
no.
This is the last,
We'll talk more later.
okay. So,
Thank you for all your work,
Aye.
Anna. Kenny Bodie,
aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Tom Gordy.
Aye.
Karen Mills,
Aye.
Kim Short,
Yes.
Tanisha Allen, Monica
Aye.
Gary, Pamela Sabesky, Jeanette Ritchel,
Yes.
Shannon Holmes. Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Todd Horsley,
Yes.
Rosia Henson Junior,
Abstain.
Brianna Sewell.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you wanna?
Yes,
No.
one comment. Those guys and gals are amazing. You have no idea what it's like to turn an entire system inside out in 40 hours. They're amazing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Perfect, yes. So with that, we're into chairman and commissioners time, yes? And mine is only, once again, to welcome our latest commissioner and really just say, this has been good. This has been a good process. We got to clean up some things. I know, there's a lot that goes to it, but I'm excited about where we're going. We're gonna figure this out because we always do. So I just say thank you all for your time, attention, and patience. All right. And thank you, staff, for the amazing work that you truly do. And we're gonna go this way, ma'am.
Pass.
All right.
I just want to say, oftentimes with difficult decisions, people don't realize the time and expertise it takes, that staff do. And I know we may not express it often, but I would just like to say, your work is greatly appreciated. I know when you make those difficult decisions, you obviously keep in mind the decisions we then have to make, to allow us to be able to make some of these decisions go about much smoother. So thank you for the legwork that you do, the time and effort. I know you care about transportation just as much. And thank you to VRE too for getting us those long-term visions, long-term planning done. We really appreciate all that because as we make decisions, as we plan out our agendas and what we want to do, everything that you guys do allows us to then go back to our jurisdiction to make our work a lot easier to be able to fund transportation the way it needs to and make decisions. So thank you for VRE and to PRTC staff for all that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I think we had a great meeting. Again, welcome Delegate Sewell and Delegate Henson to the commission. Looking forward to our partnership. I know that both of you are great advocates for transportation, so it's great to have you among our number. Also wanted to give Dr. Snyder and his team kudos, not only for the budgets that we just talked about, but for the great strategic planning meeting that we had earlier this week. I know that only a few of us were in on that meeting, but it was a really, really great conversation. And I have high hopes for the direction of this organization based on the conversation we had, based on where your team is sort of plotting the next couple of decade or so. So really wanted to commend you all for that and uplift that since it wasn't really discussed further. Thank you.
Well, team, thank you so much. Really, really and truly. It helps us have a little confidence in our votes, knowing how much work you put into it. I agree with Commissioner Gary there. It wasn't a vote to cut any services, but to try to come up with the best solution possible to keep our people moving. So thank you so much for that. And that's all I have to say.
Like that.
Not always bad. One day he's gonna surprise us.
I'm trying to adjourn every once in a while, but.
Well, I'll just simply say that it's a pleasure to join you all. I look forward to working with all the localities and finding solutions to ensure that PRTC has a bright future. And we thank all for what they've done thus far, and I look forward to joining you and helping be a visionary in that process.
It was short and sweet. I echo her statements as well. My district is along the 95 Route 1 corridor and, representing two of the largest counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Transportation is a huge deal for my constituents. So, it's an honor to work alongside y'all. I think out of all my commissions that I'm appointed to, y'all give the most data and presentation in advance to allow me to digest. Where if I do have ones or twosy questions, we're not spending 4 hours trying to digest because it is very helpful. So, thank you for all that, and I look forward to future conversations.
Just like to say is I was the newest, one of the newest people. But as a new person, I do appreciate it's become very clear to me in a very short amount of time how hard all the staff work. And I do appreciate, getting all the materials ahead of time. But I'm also encouraged by the strategic plan, and I'm learning a lot, and I appreciate the conversation and that it's civil and helpful. So thank you.
Welcome to both our delegates new here. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. It's not normally this tense. You'll have fun.
Or long.
And I will thank staff by shutting up because you don't need to listen to any of us talk anymore. No offense to you.
I also would like to welcome our delegates. We really appreciate your insights and look forward to being able to have more conversation in the coming service time that you will have here. Again, I think the strategic planning meeting on Monday, thank you all. Thank you, staff. It was great. Thank you, staff, for the very hard work on this budget to have the fiscal impact have as least impact as possible to our communities. And that is what we all are doing here in serving. So thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Schneider.
That's right. We gotta take it to the sky. All right, commissioners online, the floor, we'll start with Commissioner Gordy.
All right, guys, this was a really good meeting, very productive. Thank you to all the staff and all the hard work. Also want to welcome our two delegates to the team here. I do want to also just give a shout out to the great meeting that we had on Monday night for the strategic planning. A lot of great discussion, a lot of creativity that was coming out, and thinking outside of the box on ways that we can better try to expand the awareness of OmniRide and connect this benefit to others in the region. And I just want to point out that it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, the COG and WMATA had a big meeting. They're trying to figure out how they close a $400 million gap. So we're not alone in these challenges. And so, but one of the things that they called out or they established was called DMV Moves. And in the article about it, it says the new group will look at how all regional transportation agencies work together and are governed. Now, I don't know if all regional transportation agencies include any of those south of the Occoquan and west of the Bull Run. But I find it interesting that no one from Prince William or south is part of this conversation of what they're working on. And yet, based on our conversation on Monday, there could be better linkages between how we can link up apps and maps and things to better connect these services to one another so that we know how to better utilize them and know when things are going to be where, what the costs are, and use one payment system. It's unfortunate we live in a multi-jurisdictional region, and that just can't seem to find ways to work and collaborate together. But my hope is that we continue to move forward, having the delegates here. Hopefully we can start to break down some of those barriers and try to make this OmniRide even more robust as we connect it to the other services in the region. Thanks again for all for everybody's participation tonight, and look forward to being with you next month.
All right, thanks. So we had Commissioner Franklin and Frazier. Okay, so Commissioner Franklin.
She went to bed. I hear a pass.
Oh, sorry, I was sorry, I was on mute. I gave a whole compliment. Just was thanking the chairman for his leadership in this discussion. Again, a lot of people don't see kind of the staff work that happens and some of the negotiations that have to take place in coming up with these plans, but I know it was hard work. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership there. And then again, Dr. Schneider and staff, you guys will have a lot of work to do over the next 90 days. And certainly we understand that. So thank you in advance. And then lastly, I'll just say, let's make sure that we're still continuing the conversation with Prince William County transportation staff, and let's not wait until next budget season. Let's start those discussions now so that we already have a plan in place for next year. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. And Commissioner Frazier.
Frazier?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I want to say thank you to Dr. Snyder and the staff. Welcome to our new delegates, and thank you, Chair Angry, for your work as well as allowing me to join this meeting remotely. Have a good night, everyone.
Dr. Frazier.
Okay. That's everybody? All right,
Motion.
we're adjourned.
Second.
Second, third, fourth.
Usually by acclamation, we don't get.
Andres.
Like one night, like I don't hear me.
Yes.
So on Friday, so my mom says, take me.